Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again with another great show planned for this evening, June 20th, 2023, in which we're going to be discussing Dr. Umar Johnson says Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions. So we're going to tap in. We're going to watch the video. We're going to get some reflection. But if you're watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell where we're going to really unpack this conversation. We know this is a conversation that's been taking place since I would argue, the launch of the manosphere. We know Kevin Samuels was considered the godfather of the manosphere. And one of his talking points was that Black women refuse to take accountability, and that for many women in general, modern women, the issue was that their values are whatever is convenient. So we're going to unpack what Umar Johnson had to say regarding Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions. I would make the assumption that there are going to be a number of dissenting opinions with his position that he's taking, but we're going to make sure we attack, of course, the argument rather than the person itself. Once again, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. And then, of course, we're going to get the ball rolling. The link is already in the description. And then, of course, I'll put the link in the chat. And we will get this conversation rolling as we seek to have a conversation regarding Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions, says Dr. Umar Johnson. So very quickly before we get started, I want to share today's Black History fact. Today's Black History fact took place 63 years ago, in which Harry Belafonte, the now dearly departed Harry Belafonte, became the first African American to win an Emmy on June 20th, 1960. Belafonte was a singer, an actor, producer, songwriter, and social activist. He set musical records with the highest selling album by a single artist in 1956. The artist was known as the name Calypso, sold over 1 million albums. In addition to winning an Emmy, he also won a Tony Award, an Academy Award, and 3 Grammy Awards, and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Belafonte was well known for his civil rights activism. He was a prominent fixture in civil rights protests and marches, and a close ally of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You all know we can't mention Dr. King without mentioning Coretta Scott King. He continued his activism for various humanitarian causes into the 21st century. Belafonte was born on March 1st, 1927 in New York City, and he transitioned to the realm of the ancestors on April 25th, 2023, of congestive heart failure at the age of 96 in his Upper West Side, Manhattan, New York City home. So we want to make sure that we always praise the bridges that carried us over. Never forget where we come from, and always praise the bridges that carried us over. We know that is one of the nuggets of wisdom that Queen Mother Fannie Hamer left with us. And so we want to make sure that we do that. I see you, Brother Jovan, in the queue. I'm going to get you in a minute. But want to make sure that we also go over the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks. As you all know, we are a Black empowerment initiative, and we believe that we gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And so, number one, diversity of thought is welcome. We understand that as a Black people, we are not a monolithic group, correct? And so you can have a view right down the middle. You could be on the left. You could be right wing. Not a big deal. We believe in diversity of thought. I actually believe that having dissenting opinions creates for more of a robust conversation and intellectual development rather than simply having conversations in an echo chamber. Number two, no racial epithets of any kind can be used. So we believe in, of course, Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect. We respect ourselves as African people, self-defense, and then, of course, self-determination. Facts over feelings, right? So if someone provides a dissenting opinion, we want to make sure that you do what? You attack the opinion, the argument, and not the person. No ad hominem attacks, no straw man arguments. Then last but not least, no fundamentally false statements, right? So you can have an opinion, but we don't want you to make any fundamentally false statements. Then last but not least, here at Lumumba Speaks, our mission is to neither exonerate or vilify, but simply to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So with that being said, I'm going to play the video by Umar Johnson where he's making his claim saying Black men are responsible for Black women's poor decisions. We can then unpack that. Then, of course, if you are in queue, I will bring you in. So give me 1 second here. And here we go.
With white women.
With all women. You should only be with the black woman.
And you will say, well, if you can't find a good woman in America, there's
somewhere else.
In Africa.
Absolutely.
So why not teach that same rhetoric to our women? Like, if you feel like
tell sisters all the time, go to Africa. So I know sisters who marry. I just spoke with a sister. She invited me to the wedding. She just married a brother from the continent.
So, but instead of saying they will never get married, I'll take
sisters to Africa who married brothers they met in Africa.
Right.
So yeah,
I think there's plenty. I think there's obviously plenty of black men,
yes,
black women. So
and what I also tell black women, if you're going to go get you an African man from the continent,
right,
you're going to have to understand that the way in which you talk to black men in America will not be tolerated over there.
Why the fuck is it tolerated? It's not tolerated here. That's what we're trying to tell them.
Well, over here, I want to say this to us though, because we try to act like the way sisters treat us doesn't have a history that we are not at least partly responsible for. Let's be honest. The black woman has had to hold down the black house by herself, although imperfectly. She's had to do it by herself since the mass incarceration of black males began in the 1970s. You understand me? Most of our children are raised by a single mother right now. And it has been that way for about 50 years. So when a sister says, I don't need a man, because she couldn't find one strong enough to hold her down. Or when you meet a woman and you say, sister, I'm strong enough to be your man. You ain't got to work or you ain't got to pay the bills or whatever. Pull back. I got you. And she can't do it because all the other men before you who disappointed her. So what I'm saying is, black men, we got to be patient with our women because we created that personality. We created that. And then we want to act like we didn't play a role.
We have to be held accountable for their poor selection.
No, you have to be held accountable. No, you have to be held accountable because they have a poor selection. See, what you're saying, you're selecting a poor mate. And what I'm saying is they don't have much to select one. So, of course, you're going to end up with a poor mate. And why is she going to end up with a poor mate? Because we as black men are not raising black boys to be the men that our women need. We are not. They out there killing themselves right now. What we doing about it? Unemployed black males. What we doing about it? Pants sagging, weed smoking. What we doing about it? Black men are not raising black boys to be the men our community needs. That is 100% our fault. What I'm saying is she got a right to be angry with us. She got a right to be angry with us. We have not been on our job as black men. If the men are the providers, what have we been providing for our community? I'm not speaking you individually.
Yes.
Because you may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. But guess what? What are we doing for the community? What are we doing for the children who don't have a father? You don't think the black woman got a right to be angry when she's been raising 2/3 of the kids by herself for 50 years? And the minute she raised her voice, we say she's not humble enough. She had to become masculine to survive the rape, the molestation, the domestic abuse. Are you telling me you can't see how we created that?
I understand that, but she needs to be more
If we was loving our women and taking care of our women, do you think she would be like that? That personality has a history.
If she's picking Pookie and Ray Ray instead of
you're making her a scapegoat.
No, she's picking a scapegoat.
No.
There's good quality men that they ignore.
Why she even got it? Why is there even a Pookie in the selection?
You gotta ask her.
No. I'm gonna tell you why there's a Pookie in the selection.
What?
Because black men have abandoned black boys and have allowed social media, white media, athletes, and rappers to raise them. That's why she with Pookie. If we never allow Pookie to develop, she would not have a Pookie. If we're going to be men, the first thing we got to do is take responsibility for why our women feel the way they feel.
I can hear that.
I'm not saying that they're right to disrespect, because even if a woman disrespects me, right, that still don't give me a right to disrespect her because she's still the queen of the community. Even if she's not acting like it, I'm going to give her that respect. But when I hear...
All right, family. So you saw that. A whole lot of babble, if you ask me. So I'm going to put the link in the chat, family. The link is in the description. And then we're going to unpack what you just saw, right? We're going to unpack what you just saw. Umar Johnson stating, he said a lot, in my opinion, without saying anything. So I'm going to have some people tap in, give their perspective, then I will give my perspective. Brother Javon, think you're having some technical difficulties. Hopefully we could get that squared away. But once again, if you're watching, the link is in the chat, family. You do not have to cam up. Keyword, you do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. And you do not, I repeat, you do not have to use your actual name. So you can use a pseudonym if you want to tap in, be part of the conversation, and get your perspective. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, right? Number one, all right, Brother Javon, go right ahead.
What's going on, man? Go ahead and catch me up on that. I was making sure I was adjusting the volume, but what was you saying?
Okay, so a couple things to me to unpack. Number one, I think this is symbology at its finest. I'm gonna be quite honest with you. So there's a couple things that he stated that I think are just completely ahistorical, not factual. I'm gonna talk loud, and that makes it true. So one, he states that black men have abandoned black boys. That's completely false.
Right.
The CDC studies show that black men in this country are more involved in the raising and rearing of their children than any man of any racial ethnic group in this country. Right? The CDC has no reason to cape for black men. Right? So this is misinformation. This is subterfuge. This is being rooted in deceit, deception, and hyperbole because you're trying to gain a particular audience for support. Number two, he states that why is there Pookie and Ray Ray in the community? In every racial ethnic group, you're going to have individuals who are going to be doing things that are nefarious in nature. You would never have a utopia.
That's right.
Anywhere, right? We could go back to the oldest criminal justice text that we know of in human history, the Code of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia. Oldest written criminal justice text. You have people out there doing nefarious things. This is just what you're going to have. It's a reality. It's called life in the big city, right? So we have to be cognizant of that. He talks about black women having to raise children on their own. I would disagree. Right? He talks about mass incarceration. We know what took place with the crack cocaine epidemic, right? But the issue that he tends to omit is that the majority of black men during the 1980s did not turn to crime as a way to make a living and support their families. The overwhelming majority. So I'm dismissive of that, right? He talks about black women had to be masculine to deal with XYZ. I've come in contact, I've traveled to developing nations. I prefer developing rather than third world, right? That's a negative connotation, pejorative in nature that deals with a whole lot of different issues coming out of the Cold War. So I'm going to use developing nation. I looked at that stat, and that's not even as useful as we would like it to be. Love Ash, what do you mean by that? Tap in and let us know what do you mean by I looked at that stat and it's not even as useful as we would like it to be. In terms of what stat are you referring to? But hopefully you can tap in and be part of the conversation. You meet sisters coming from developing nations who don't have the basic level of industrialization that we have. Sometimes they're walking.
First world country benefits.
Right. We have first world privilege. Extremely feminine. So I'm dismissive of that. Right. I've met women, unfortunately, who have experienced horrendous things living in refugee camps. Extremely feminine. So I'm dismissive of that. Right. Once again, we're seeing a lack of accountability. He talks about that we created the attitude and the behavior. That is that is ahistorical. We see the concept of black women being mean and demonstrative and cantankerous coming from the sapphire stereotype that was created in the 1920s on an Amos and Andy TV show.
Yeah.
That's the origin of the sapphire stereotype. So this is not something that we participated in, right? Ahistorical, subterfuge, deception, hyperbole, histrionics, straight bullshitting. Shut your punk ass up, okay? I mean, literally, this is just bullshit. We talk about black men not doing XYZ, right? This is all they got to pick from. That is cap. The majority of black men, I believe it's 56% according to blackdemographics.com. We know black demographics is what? The black demographics for black people, by black people. Blackdemographics.com is a reputable source of black statistics. It's been cited by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the New York Post, right, and CNN. 56% of black men are single and childless and in the middle class. Right. So when we talk about this concept of this is all they got to pick from, that is a lie. Right. So we see it's almost like the Fresh Prince. When in doubt, blame black men. Right. And on Fresh Prince, it was when in doubt, blame Will. right? This is something that Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, Dr. Tommy J. Curry talk about. That black men are the softest targets because we're seen as public enemy number one in American society. So at the end of the day, guess what we're going to do? Blame them. Anything goes bad, blame them. He's not around, blame them. Right? So we need to be cognizant of black misandric talking points coming from what we perceive to be masculine black men.
Right.
We put this together, right? Because there was a situation, unfortunately, and I see you, Brother Bawana. I'm going to get to your comment in a second. You're familiar with this, Brother Javon. Back in our hometown, Dayton, Ohio. Shout out to the 937 Gym City, right? West Dayton Strong. There was a sister who was unfortunately deleted by the father of her child.
Right.
You may be familiar with the situation.
I know him. I know him personally. Yeah.
Unfortunate situation. I didn't know him personally, but it's still unfortunate because the child lost both their parents. We don't need violence in our community. We don't need black on black fratricide in any way, shape, or form. We talk about this all the time, right? As masculine men, as what we would call ourselves bulls in our younger days, we got to move far away from that type of thinking and logic as possible.
Right.
An unfortunate situation would transpire. A brother that I went to high school with put out this long diatribe talking about how black men ain't this and black men ain't that. I said, no, that's an individual black man that did that. That does not represent us as a people. And one of the biggest issues that we have living in a society that we do not control or dominate is that whenever one black person engages in nefarious, unbecoming, self-defeating behavior, that's used as the narrative of that's how they are. All of them that way. We know
broad brush
white people because they have racial privilege in America. You can have one white person engaging in behavior that's self-defeating, unbecoming, nefarious, self-destructive, etc. They say, "Oh, he's just eccentric. He's just Byron." But Byron doesn't represent us, right? So something that we need to be cognizant of. I think another issue is when he talks about once again abandoning, or they had to raise the children on their own. Right.
They're not going to talk about incarceration?
Well, that he mentioned that, but I don't, in my opinion, that's not even reputable. Unless you're talking about black people who have been wrongfully incarcerated, meaning they're innocent and they're sitting in jail. And according to Amnesty International, the percentage of wrongfully incarcerated people who are incarcerated is 4%.
Okay.
Right. So I throw that out the window because even if out of all the people who are incarcerated, that still makes up a small fraction of black men. The majority of black men are not criminals, are not engaging in criminal activity or behavior.
Let me add to what you're saying. One of the things that I noticed is he's fully aware. I mean, because I've been listening to Umar for a minute, man. He's fully aware of the system in the ways that it's used us against each other. So in that interview, it took me off guard because it's almost like if you understand how the system is designed, why in this instance are you omitting a real known primary fact that it was the same system that you speak of used our own women against us basically in different ways mentally to be what it is now, to where it's almost a gender war almost within our community.
Right. And so part of the issue is, and I really took issue with this, is they had to raise the kids on their own for 60 years. That's not true, right? My mother and father still married to this day. We know based on the proliferation of YouTube and the manosphere videos where women are calling in stating, I had children, the father of my child wanted to be married and have a family, and I said, no, I don't want to be married. So this isn't a situation where women are having to raise children. Right, these are situations where women, because they have free will, they live in the freest country in the world in terms of women's rights. Right, they have the choice to be able to do whatever they want,
and they're incentivized in certain cases.
Right, in certain cases. So, brother Bawana, you wanted to know about the sapphire stereotype. The sapphire stereotype is the black woman who seeks to emasculate black men. She's very controlling, demeaning, masculine. She's taut-tongued. Think of Angela from Why Did I Get Married? Right? She tends to insult black men and disrespect black men whenever she has a chance. Right? That is the sapphire stereotype. We see the sapphire stereotype in a number of movies, but the sapphire stereotype is considered the sassy black woman, hand on the hip. You can't tell me nothing. that type of thing, right?
And that's been the trope. That's been the trope that they've used heavily for empowerment, female empowerment, especially in the black image.
Yeah, so tabloid talk shows, we saw this. The Jerry Springer show, Jenny Jones,
it's unfortunate.
The Maury Povich show, Ricky Lake. We're talking about
especially in the 90s. Yeah,
Omarosa would be an example of the Sapphire stereotype, right? Every time you turn around, she's getting into it with someone, right? So those would be examples of black women being a sapphire. And so as we see, society promotes black women as being masculine, but at the same time, the society promotes white women as being extremely feminine and so on and so forth. But Bawana says, let me see here. You think Dr. Johnson doesn't know who Tommy Curry is or what Dr. T. How sometimes Johnson arguments are? He's doing his TDJ thing by appealing to the female audience.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a form of grifting. It's a form of grifting.
Right. Buckeye Asset Claim. The link is in the chat. The link is also in the description if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's almost to the point where it's hard to take the guy serious. And I would argue part of it is rooted in, hey, he's promised a lot and delivered very little. And so, hey, this is all I got left. So let me blame black man for everything. Right. Because the reality of the situation is we live in the freest country in the world in which women have the right to get married or not get married. You can't make any adult do anything. I have children. It's sometimes even hard to make your kids do what you want them to do, right? In today's day and age, right? So this concept and idea of one of the biggest issues I push back on. Oh, when he stated, even if she's disrespecting me, she's still a queen. No, you cannot engage in miscreant, Herodin type behavior and yet still be a queen. Queens are regal, graceful, elegant, intelligent at all times. Right? So you can't disrespect. For example, Brother Javon, this is my brother. I've known him for several years, probably about close to 10 years now. If I'm not moving in divine African masculine energy, Brother Javon's going to call me out on that. And he's going to say, Brother Bakari, you're not being your highest self. You're not being the king that I know you are. And until you start being the king that I know you are, you can't claim that title. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, we had 2 conversations like that, real deep like that, for real.
Yeah, so, and this is one of the reasons why Brother Javon is one of my best friends, is because I need people in my life who's going to tell me, hey,
right,
you're not being what you're supposed to be. And until you're being what you're supposed to be, you can't claim to be X, Y, Z.
Yeah, right. It's a solid circle.
Once again, promoting this one-way violence where women could disrespect you, they could emotionally and verbally abuse you, sometimes even physically, but you're still a queen. For example, Tupac Shakur, when he says, Mama, even if you was a crack fiend, you still were a black queen. Bullshit. You can't be smoking dope. You can't love the dope more than your children and be a queen. It doesn't work that way. Queens,
it's ironic how you said that.
Queens protect their progeny. They look out for their progeny. They invest in their progeny. They develop their progeny. They don't demean their community. They uplift their community. Same with kings as well. So I can't follow that.
It's ironic you said that, man. Building on top of that, they had that Dear Mama documentary, which was a good documentary. But if you look at it, man, there was a lot of pain that he had that actually came out in that documentary. Now, of course, there's definitely going to be some limited information, but we found out that he was actually at odds with his mother from finding out about a lot of the lies that she kept.
Yeah, estranged from his father. She lied and told him.
Yeah, it was
the country.
Yeah, it was telling, man. It was really telling. And I think Kanye West has a similar type of story with his mother.
He mentioned that a bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So I mean, it gets deeper than what we usually see, or the narrative that they paint.
Issue of black men abandoning boys isn't the case. What we're looking at is widespread parental alienation. Now, this isn't just a black issue. If you go down to the family courts, you will find women of all races are engaging in parental alienation. In fact, there's a great YouTube channel entitled Pink Book Lessons, where I don't know how the sister was able to get copies of these court Zoom calls, but the women will go in there and say, I want child support, but I want the father to have no visitation, no legal rights whatsoever. Right? Crazy, right? If you're watching, make sure you subscribe, in the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. You're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube at Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on black. We're having a conversation this evening regarding Dr. Umar Johnson, stating Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions. The link is in the chat. I'm going to put the link in the chat once again. The link is also in the description. If you want to be part of the conversation, family, you can. You do not have to cam up. Keyword, you do not have to cam up. You do not have to use your actual name. You could use a pseudonym, okay? If you want to tap in, be part of the conversation, and we can move from there. So Sister Love Ashes, Dr. Umar is doing his TD Jakes thing. Brother Barana says, we even have sisters fleeing to Africa with their kids, and the dads don't even know it. This is very true. I can recall with Nas, you know, the mother of his son, Khalees, was alienating him from his son, not making a child available. So, like I said, Umar Johnson is listening to that. It's very hard to follow. Very hard to follow, right? Oh, yeah. If we were doing our jobs, there wouldn't be any. That's completely false. You're always going to have individuals who are engaging in deviant behavior. Deviant behavior, irrespective of what society you're in, because there is no utopia, right? So, but I've given my spiel on that. So I definitely want to hear from you all. Once again, the link is in the chat, family. You do not have to cam up. You do not have to use your actual name. You can use a pseudonym. Tap in. Let us know what you think. Brother Javon, what say you?
Man, I mean, for one, I appreciate the comments in here. I mean, it gives me a lot of hope, knowing that people are looking at it from the perspective that it needs to be looked at and not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. So, I mean, because I don't know, I was kind of like feeling like a lot of people were going to kind of lean the way that he is going, because it's really lucrative right now to go that route. But for people to be in this chat and adding comments to where they see the wolf in sheep's clothing, I really appreciate everybody for their ability to be able to peep that, because again, it's a lot of money in pandering, but we know, you know, the truth, it might not have so many viewers, but the truth is always going to shine through. So appreciate everybody adding their comments to it this evening.
Well, I guess I'll go. Respect to you, Brother Javon. Respect to you, Prof. Let me just add my 5 cents on it. I think that what Brother Umar said is chauvinistic. And the reason why I say that is, it's almost like the women have no agency. They can't think in and of themselves outside of what the man thinks. It's almost like, okay, if the man got his stuff together, automatically the woman would get rid of her nefarious nature. You know what I mean? She only has any nefariousness through the mind, through the male. You know what I mean? But women can think for themselves too. You have good-minded, good-thinking women who think for themselves. You have nefarious-minded women out there. I want them to visit the courthouse. Just visit the courthouse and see some of the women who are implicated in some of these crimes. Some of these women are masterminds. You know, and I'm not trying to be mean to Black women. I'm not trying to be mean to Black women. I'm just saying that they have the ability to think too. And sometimes their thinking is not always straight-laced, whether they have a good man in their life or not. So I think that what he is suggesting to me is almost chauvinistic. It's almost like women can't think outside of a man, and that's just not true. That's just not true. And I just really wanted to add that 5 cents, man. Brother Lumumba, I'm battling the flu. I'm gonna continue to listen.
No doubt, I appreciate you tapping in. I think that's a great point, right? And we see this a lot, where people will make the argument that, oh, if brothers get their ish together, women will follow, right? And the reality is, if you've lived in the real world, if you've lived in the world as an adult, you would know women are going to do whatever they want, just like anyone else. It doesn't matter what you say or do. You could be doing everything right. That's a grown, she's a sentient being. She can think for herself. She's going to do what she wants. Same with men, same with anyone, right? So I push back on that. So TG says, or less pathological than Black women. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Hopefully you can unpack and share a little bit more in terms of what you mean by that comment. But so it is a bit, of course, condescending towards women, that they can't think for themselves, so on and so forth. Major issue, a major key, right? He's talking about a major
key.
When
you really think about it, it's actually giving them a disservice, because he almost made them in the sense of like being infantile.
Yeah, like
you know what I mean?
They can't think for themselves.
Right, and then that's not true at all.
Yeah.
I mean, giving respect to even women that think like that's not true. Like I know well-thinking black women, like a lot of them. So
Right.
I know that was almost like an scapegoat to try to pander to me, the way that I saw.
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely. I think it was 100% pandering. I think it's beyond simping. Right? I think it's dry begging almost. You know what I mean? Dry begging almost. Particularly when you could say to someone that you could be vile, you could be disrespectful, you could be belligerent, you could be verbally and emotionally abusive, you could be toxic, but yet you're still a queen. I mean, if that makes you a queen, then what is a queen? Right? I mean, what are we doing? We're just making our own definitions to words now. We're attributing
terms being convoluted. Yeah.
Right. So, like I said, this is extremely dangerous because in order for this is one of the major issues we tend to have in black spaces that are reportedly pro-black. You know this. You've been doing work for many years. Is there's a lack of accountability. You can say to do whatever, and well, you know they racist. What they got to do with the price of tea in China? I had one of my students say, well, we have to commit crimes because to make a living. I said, no, we don't. He says, well, what would I do if I don't do that? I said, you could what? Become a real estate agent. You go to flight school, learn how to fly planes through the friendly skies. You could get your CDLs. I said, you could become the cable guy. Right? You have options. You just want to be a criminal because you don't want to work for a living. You can't run no game on me. How do I know this? Because I used to be a miscreant.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to be honest about what's going on here. And secondly, what we also know is that what tends to happen is the young men who are going to prison are raised by whom?
So it's mostly single mother households.
Mostly single mothers. And what do we know? Most women lack accountability. So the child is growing up in the home, but there's no accountability. How do you think he's going to turn out?
I think, but you got to pair it up with accountability. Most importantly, sometimes there's a lack of structure. This isn't in every case, but in most cases, there's a lack of structure in the home where there's a lot more leniency, especially if the child is a boy.
Right. Matter of fact, yes, Dr. Johnson Conjufer. I got the book behind me somewhere. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I don't think I can. But Dr. Johnson Conjufer wrote a book entitled Raising Black Boys. And one of the things he states in the book is, and I'm going to get you a comment in a minute, TG. If you want, I hope you can tap in, be part of the conversation. Link is in the chat, link is in the description. He says some mothers, not all, but some, raise their daughters and love their sons. The daughter goes to Penn State, the son is in the state pen, they grow up in the same household because she coddles the son. Right? So TG says, why don't black men organize a sustainable movement to combat those who oppose you? But I would disagree. I think we have. We have. This is something that we've been doing. Right. But what you also have to understand is that whenever there is real or perceived black progress, not just here in America, but globally, there are periods of racial retrenchment. So when black men created what? Yes, we could go back to the early 1900s. The UNIA, there was what? Retrenchment initiatives to what? Topple the UNIA. When black men created what? The Black Panther Party and a number of other black nationalist organizations to solve the issues and our problems. The retrenchment initiative was what? COINTELPRO.
Yeah, infiltrated from the inside out.
Right. So you have to understand that we live behind enemy lines and that whenever there is real or perceived what? Black progress is followed by a period of racial retrenchment. A great example when we talk about perceived black progress would be the historic election of Barack Obama as the 44th president, and many would argue the first black president. Right? That was followed by what? A rise in what? White vigilantism, extrajudicial killings of black people in America, and a rise in what? White nationalist hate groups. So once again, whenever there is real or perceived progress for black people in America and throughout the world, it's followed by a period of racial retrenchment. In fact, that's one of the core themes of my class that I teach, African American history, with the students. One of the core themes is of course, what no one is saying. We're not letting anyone stop anyone. All I'm stating is you have to be aware of what? Retrenchment initiatives and why some movements that began yesteryear of previous generations are not present today.
Right. And adding to your explanation, what you just gave, this is by no way to the person who asked that an admission or omission of defeat. This is just, you have to understand the lay of the land and the history of the groups growing. The attempts that some of them were squashed, but the energy is still there. Again, like anytime they see a potential threat and it's led by a black messiah or usually, you know, some type of black masculine front, you know, that's going to be stomped out. And then they can definitely infiltrate a lot of the ladies and the children. And then once they get a hold of the ladies and the children of any kind of group, this is just war tactic. I mean, you pretty much can monopolize and control that community. And that's what I think that's what we're seeing now, man. It's like the end result of that economic engineering and that fear of us actually getting our shit together, you know what I mean, and doing it the right way. Right. You know that where we're at now is designed to be where we're at. Like they're actually comfortable that we are in this state or entering this state of slumber, because they definitely don't want us to wake up. Really, they don't want us to really operate on a unity type of basis. So the infighting and all that's welcomed. This is what is well expected. I mean, this is what they actually wake up and hope for every day that they see. There's the arguments between, you know, the black men and black women. So for the ones that understand what's going on, we definitely, you know, we always cook. We still keep the same energy. But if you really want to be an opposition and be in the way, I mean, we don't got time for that. I mean, you know, you might as well join the other squad, to be honest. Well, you know, we already know there's always been people who's been against the movement. They use people that look like us to infiltrate and stop these movements. So, you know, if you come with that energy, it's either that or you're with what we're talking about, trying to actually improve, realize the issues and improve it instead of just standing in the way and just being contrarian.
Right. Well,
questions are fine, but contrarian energy, it don't flow.
And that's what I'm about to get to. That's what I'm about to get to. Because I don't know if you can see the chat as well. You can see the chat, yes?
I can't.
Okay, so
and it's cool. I don't need to. I still want to cook.
He says, "How can women and children control men if you have a sustainable movement?" Brother Javon never stated that women and children control men. He stated that women and children are susceptible to manipulation by the power structure when the men are being removed from the community, from the home, from the environment. But once again, I'm feeling some contrarian energy. So once again, I want you to tap in, be part of the conversation. I'm gonna put the link in the chat below your comment. Also, the link is in the description. And I'm going to play the video one more time. Some of you tapped in about a little bit later. Play the video, and hopefully you all can tap in and give your thoughts on, of course, Dr. Umar Johnson's comments. So let me share my screen and we'll get this up. Here we go.
White women.
With all women. You should only be with the black woman.
And you will say, well, if you can't find a good woman in America, there's
somewhere else.
In
Absolutely.
Africa. So why not teach that same rhetoric to our women? Like if you feel like
tell sisters all the time, go to Africa. So I know sisters who marry. I just spoke with a sister. She invited me to the wedding. She just married a brother from the continent.
So, but instead of saying they will never get married,
I'll take sisters to Africa who married brothers they met in Africa.
Right.
So yeah,
I think there's plenty. I think there's obviously plenty of black men and black women.
So and what I also tell black women, if you're going to go get you an African man from the continent,
right,
you're going to have to understand that the way in which you talk to black men in America will not be tolerated over there.
Why the fuck is it tolerated? It's not tolerated here. That's what we're trying to tell them.
Well, over here, I want to say this to us though, because we try to act like the way sisters treat us doesn't have a history that we are not at least partly responsible for. Let's be honest. The black woman has had to hold down the black house by herself, although imperfectly. She's had to do it by herself since the mass incarceration of black males began in the 1970s. You understand me? Most of our children are raised by a single mother right now. And it has been that way for about 50 years. So when a sister says, I don't need a man, because she couldn't find one strong enough to hold her down. Or when you meet a woman and you say, sister, I'm strong enough to be your man. You ain't got to work or you ain't got to pay the bills or whatever. Pull back. I got you. And she can't do it because all the other men before you who disappointed her. So what I'm saying is, black men, we got to be patient with our women because we created that personality. We created that. And then we want to act like we didn't play a role.
We have to be held accountable for their poor selection.
No, you have to be held accountable. No, you have to be held accountable because they have a poor selection. See, what you're saying, you're selecting a poor mate. And what I'm saying is they don't have much to select one. So, of course, she's going to end up with a poor mate. And why is she going to end up with a poor mate? Because we as black men are not raising black boys to be the men that our women need. We are not. They out there killing themselves right now. What we doing about it? Unemployed black males, what we doing about it? Pants sagging, weed smoking, what we doing about it? Black men are not raising black boys to be the men our community needs. That is 100% our fault. What I'm saying is she got a right to be angry with us. She got a right to be angry with us. We have not been on our job as black men. If the men are the providers, what have we been providing for our community? I'm not speaking you individually.
Yes.
Because you may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. But guess what? What are we doing for the community? What are we doing for the children who don't have a father? You don't think the black woman got a right to be angry when she's been raising 2/3 of the kids by herself for 50 years? And the minute she raised her voice, we say she's not humble enough. She had to become masculine to survive the rape, the molestation, the domestic abuse. Are you telling me you can't see how we created that?
I understand that, but she needs
if
to
we
be
was
more
loving
selective.
our women and taking care of our women, do you think she would be like that? That personality has a history.
If she's picking Pookie and Ray Ray instead of
you're making her a scapegoat.
No, she's picking a scapegoat.
No.
There's good quality men that they ignore.
Why she even got it? Why is there even a Pookie in the selection?
You gotta ask her.
No. I'm gonna tell you why there's a Pookie in the selection.
What?
Because black men have abandoned black boys and have allowed social media, white media, athletes, and rappers to raise them. That's why she with Pookie. If we never allowed Pookie to develop, she would not have a Pookie. If we're going to be men, the first thing we got to do is take responsibility for why our women feel the way they feel.
I can hear that.
I'm not saying that they're right to disrespect, because even if a woman disrespects me, right? That still don't give me a right to disrespect her, because she's still the queen of the community. Even if she's not acting like it, I'm going to give her that respect. But when
we're back. Provide triggers for evolution. Why not invite Dr. Umar to this channel to have a conversation or be a critic of what he said, as opposed to having this conversation in his absence? I agree with you 100%. I did invite him. I emailed him and I called him yesterday, this morning, and this afternoon, but I got no response. So yes, I reached out to him and I tried to have him on the show to, of course, have a conversation with him about the comments that he made, but he did not respond. I emailed him, I texted him, and I called him 3 times, and I didn't hear back from him. So there's nothing I could do about that, but I tried. Basedology, I want you to tap in. You said Umar's a clown. I want you to unpack why you made that statement. Once again, if you're watching, hit the like button, thumbs up, hit that notification bell, hit the subscribe button. You're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on black. Once again, bless the brother on the super chat and the Cash App. We want to make sure we are able to keep the show going. So if you can, bless us on the super chat and the Cash App. Love Ash, would love for you to tap in, be part of the conversation as well. Provide triggers for evolution, would love for you to tap in as well. I can see your screenshot or your profile picture where you're looking at colonialism and then neo-colonialism. So I definitely want you to tap in and be part of the conversation. TG, once again, tap in, be part of the combo. You do not have to cam up. But once you be part of the combo, once again, I think you should continue to invite him. Better yet, have a conversation between Dr. Umar and Dr. Curry. I haven't reached out to Dr. Curry. I've reached out to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. He has agreed to come on the show. We're still trying. We got some scheduling conflicts, but he's agreed to come on the show. Dr. T. Hassan Johnson is one of the progenitors of Black male studies. We know he's a professor of African or Africana studies at Fresno State University in California. He's agreed to come on the show. So I'm definitely going to reach out to Dr. Curry because I've had his book, Man Not. And so we got a lot of work to do. But no one's running. Like I said, I've reached out. I will continue to reach out to Dr. Umar Johnson. Like I said, emailed him, texted him, called several times. And hopefully we can get him on the show where we can have a conversation with him personally about some of the claims that he's making. I would make the assumption, no negative energy to the brothers on the panel, but I don't think they were well versed in these issues, be able to provide an articulate, substantial rebuttal to the claims that Dr. Umar Johnson was making. And so I think that's why he was able to really dominate the conversation the way he did, because they weren't able to provide a rebuttal. But I can, as many of you know, my life is Black studies. So with that being said, once again, the link is in the chat, family. Link is in the description. tap in, be part of the conversation. And I know one of the issues that we tend to find when we look at Black misandric talking points is a desire, almost an insatiable need to describe Black men in monolithic terms, right? So we're talking about being intellectually lazy, describing Black men in monolithic terms, and then there tends to be a unwillingness to be self-critical and self-corrective regarding what are we doing, right, on a personal level, individual level, that contributes to us living racially disempowering, self-destructive, and of course, self-defeating lifestyles, right? So it's very easy. I think it's very difficult for any group of people to develop if we're always blaming the power structure. We're never looking at, first and foremost, what we do. We know here at Lumumba Speaks, we always believe that the enemy of Black people is twofold. We have external enemies that engage in what? Anti-Black racism, and that could be anyone. But we talk about, of course, whites, non-Black people of color. And then we have, of course, the internal enemy. And that's the way that we live our daily lives in a manner that is, of course, self-defeating and self-destructive. So just something to be cognizant of. Once again, family, Sister Love Ash, need you to tap in, be part of the conversation. I see you're disagreeing with TG. Want to know what your disagreement is. For the basedology, you're disagreeing with TG. Want to know what your disagreement is. For the Bawana, you can tap back in as well. Provide triggers for evolution. Want you to tap in as well, share your perspective, of course, on what Dr. Umar Johnson has to say. And once again, I never run from the smoke, right? I've met Dr. Umar Johnson before. I met him about 12 years ago. We've talked sporadically since, and I will continue to try to do what I can to get him on the show, on the channel, so we can have this conversation with him in person. Okay.
Hey, man, one of the things that I noticed, if I can add, is that when he got to the Pookie and Ray Ray scenario or example, he explained Generation Z and their issues right now with the TikTok and the social media, them being subjected to it the most, as why a Pookie and Ray Ray exists. But it's like there was no explanation on the quote unquote Pookie and Ray Ray character from the 80s or the 90s. Like, so there was no TikTok and social media then. So what was in the selection? What was the reason why they were being selected back then? Because we know that was happening.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like in his explanation, it just confused me a little bit. I'm not saying it wasn't true, because I know this social media kind of society that we live in right now is going to have its own issues in the future. But he used that to explain why the Pookie and Ray Rays were chosen, because of TikTok, social media. It's like, no, they were being chosen way before the internet was even, cracking. You know what I mean? So like, I just want to understand. Like, I just wanted him to be a little bit more clear on what he meant by that.
Well, and that's what I was talking about. When you tend to have individuals who engage in Black misandric type of rhetoric, there's a lack of intellectual clarity, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about making monolithic statements about entire groups of people, right? We're talking about being consciously or unconsciously providing racist rights with of course, ammunition against us. For example,
right.
That's what most racist people say is all Black men are what? Criminals and buffoons and no good. He made an argument. He says, well, Black women are choosing Pookies and Ray Rays because that's all they have to offer.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Right? So what are we talking about here?
Right.
Because if you're saying that's true, then you're saying that about yourself.
I was going to say he knows that's cat. He's met you and me personally. Like, oh yeah.
So I mean, and like I said before, the majority of black men are not criminals. The majority of Black men are law-abiding, hardworking citizens. This is just the reality, irrespective of where they fall in terms of socioeconomic status. The majority of Black men do not turn to crime and criminal activity. In fact, when you think about criminal activity, typically most of the crimes we're finding Black males engaging in, the age group is they're teenagers, they're adolescents, they're not adults, right? So once again, we can back this up with what FBI crime statistics, right? Mm-hmm. Every year this comes out. So like I said, I would have to argue that, in my opinion, this brother's a charlatan. He's willing to say whatever he can, whenever it benefits him, and continue to have people ingratiate themselves.
It had grifter energy on it. Yeah, it had grifter energy all on it. It confused me because I was like, whoa, that kind of That was a little odd for him to say it in that kind of sequence, but all right, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely ridiculous. So once again, family, the link is in the chat. Definitely want you all to tap in and be part of the conversation. We're having a conversation regarding Dr. Umar Johnson stating that Black men are to blame. Once again, he states Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions. Of course, I vehemently disagree, but all perspectives are welcome. We definitely want to hear from some sisters. I know we got some queen sisters, some beautiful sisters, some dynamic sisters in the chat. I'm not going to say strong sisters. I remember I was having a conversation with a sister from Ghana, and she told me, she said, I'm not supposed to be strong. I'm a woman. Right? So she said, don't say I'm strong. You can say I'm dynamic. You can say I'm vivacious. You can say a number of things, right? But she said, don't say that I'm strong. That's masculine energy. And she told me that's not something I want to be associated with. So I said, much respect to you, Black Power. Shout out to the land of the golden stool, by the way, with the Ashanti. And so once again, I want to make sure that we have some sisters tap in as well. I'm going to get to you but in a second, but Bawana provide triggers for evolution states. Interestingly enough, comparatively, the same relational dynamics are emerging in the Black South African community. I would agree. Most would argue, and if you are Pan-Africanist, you should know about what's going on in South Africa. Most would argue that South Africa is America East, right? If you talk to brothers and sisters from South Africa who have visited South Africa, who are aware of the political, social, and economic dynamics in South Africa, they argue that South Africa is America East. So people say if you want to go to Africa, you probably don't want to go to South Africa because you feel like you haven't left. So there's something to be cognizant of when we talk about some of the Pan-Africanist issues from a Pan-African standpoint, some of the struggles we're finding our people dealing with throughout the world. Brother Bawana.
Brother Lumumba, when you call Dr. when you call Dr. Umar Johnson a charlatan, it made me laugh and really call it because I'm almost there. You're a little bit beyond the curve for me, but I'm not there yet. But I'm starting to believe these kinds of things because I'm asking the question: why do you have to villainize Black men to be more acceptable to your female audience?
Right.
Why do you have to do that?
It's lucrative.
So if it sells, this guy, he'll say anything. So, but I'm blinded by the fact that I can say, well, he's building an educational institution in Delaware. That's kind of like stopping me from going over the hill and actually calling this guy a charlatan. That's kind of stopping me from doing that because if you are willing to say anything, I remember when Tariq Nasheed was on this anti-Black immigration kind of run. And then Dr. Umar Johnson got on it for a minute. And then he came off of it. So I'm asking, is this guy, what is his actual position?
Right, and that's what I was speaking to, that oftentimes what we're finding with many individuals who put themselves out in the public as public intellectuals or whatever, we tend to find the values are based on whatever's convenient. Right? There isn't something that they stand and hold firm to. It's whatever's convenient, right? So you know me, many people know my personal life, things I've gone through, but I would never come on here and just bash an entire group of people. I would say this individual person was trash, right? Which I try to refrain from doing because we don't want to speak ill about any of our people, particularly on a public platform. But once again, part of the values of being a Pan-Africanist, right, is we should be looking to lift each other up. In fact, when we talk about Malcolm being a master teacher, Henry Sylvester Williams, and the great line of divine that is, of course, Ida B. Wells, right? Shirley Chisholm, etc., is that the master teachers would teach us what? We used to do these things, but we're not doing them anymore, right? So what they would tell us is they would correct our behavior, but also encouraging us to engage in different behavior. It's the same as when I used to volunteer in Dayton public schools. I would go in and a young man would be sitting out in the hallway. We all know how that is. You got to sit in the hallway, you and misbehave, and so on and so forth. I'll go up to the young man and say, hey, you're better than that. So not only am I correcting, I'm also encouraging at the same time. You're better than that.
Absolutely. And another thing too is in terms of Black leadership, leadership sometimes has an unpopular opinion, and a leader will stand by his unpopular opinion, even though the masses may not appreciate it. This is a distinctive difference. This guy says anything to be acceptable. So it kind of really makes me question. God, brother.
If I could, and many of you know, I am vehemently on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to political ideology with Dr. King, right? But I've read the man's autobiography 3 times. In fact, I got it behind me here somewhere. There we go. And one of the things he mentioned is that a leader is not a seeker of consensus. A leader is a creator of consensus. And that speaks directly to what you stated. When Dr. King took a position speaking out against American imperialism in the Vietnam War after getting the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, right? Public opinion turned on him. But he did not cower. He didn't say, okay, well, let me go along with whatever's convenient, right? So once again, that speaks to your point, brother. I apologize for cutting you off.
No worries. Like I say, I just, you have to really take a hard look at in terms of what leadership is supposed to be, and you have to be a reader. If you didn't understand King, if you didn't understand Garvey, all these notable figures, Malcolm X, in that time, they created the consensus. Like you say, they created consensus. They created the mind, and then people sought to follow after, even though it was a hard pill to swallow at first. After a while, people begin to accept that message. This guy, I mean, wherever the wind blows, he's going towards it. So I'm really looking at him with a jaundiced eyes. Like, is this guy really? Is he serious? Is he really trying to lead people, or is he just a populist kind of person who wants to be out there as big Papa Daddy, whatever he calls his name. Whatever.
Pan-Africanism, absolutely.
The Prince of Pan-Africanism. I'm like, are you a serious person trying to do serious work, or are you just an entertainer who's just trying to be popular and appeal to wherever the wind blows? That's the question I have.
I will say this, particularly with a lot of Black leaders, we find that they tend to have to be charismatic, even a bit entertaining. It's what we like to call edutainment, right? Because we know our people, we're people of rhythm and spirit. And so oftentimes, particularly dealing with individuals who aren't conscious, who are not in the know, right? You have to use a little bit of charisma and jokes and so on and so forth to get people to buy in and then listen to what the real substance in your message. So I can understand that. I mean, I do that in the classroom. I'm cracking jokes. I can't just say, hey, this is what the literature says in X, Y, Z. But I get where you're coming from in terms of particularly, I like what you said, looking at things with a jaundiced eye, because of the kind of wavering that tends to be taking place, where he's kind of going back and forth on different issues. I think is a bit it leaves a lot to be desired. You begin to question someone's true motives, and everybody can evolve. Someone can say, hey, I had a particular perspective about an issue in 2012. It's 2023. I view things differently. But oftentimes what we want to see is consistency, right? And I think that tends to be a struggle with many individuals who are in the public light. And I would argue part of it is because they have to recreate themselves to continue to gain an audience and keep people interested with, of course, the information and, of course, if the information that they're seeking to disseminate, right? So I think that's just something to be cognizant of. Provide triggers for evolution states, I am a sister in the chat, and I want us to have positive, transformative, and nation-building relationships with our men. I agree with you 100%, sister.
You can start by tapping it. Start by tapping it. Provide triggers. Start by tapping it, sister. Start by tapping it.
You can start by tapping in and being part of the conversation, sister. We need a sister like you in the conversation to provide perspective, provide the divine African feminine energy. P Funk 100 says, "I want a South African woman to sing the Dinah's." I can't pronounce that, to me and with me. Okay, shout out to you, brother. No doubt. So hopefully. I'm gonna put the link in the chat one more time. If you're watching, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, as well as the notification bell. You're watching Lumumba Speaks on YouTube. Sister, you said you're timid. No problem. We've had a lot of sisters and brothers come in who were timid. This is a welcoming space for Black-minded people. Now, if you're not Black-minded, you can come in. You can still come in. I'm open to a dissenting opinion. We don't believe in having an echo chamber, sister. But this is the place where you're going to be supported, where you're going to find your voice, and where we're going to promote you elevating your voice more than anything, right? So if you're looking to find a voice, elevate your voice, this is the place to do it. So you're more than welcome. Once again, the link is in the chat, sister. Once again, you're watching Lumumba Speaks. We're having a conversation regarding Dr. Umar Johnson states. He says that Black men are to blame for Black women's poor decisions, poor choices. And I'm going to continue to reach out to Dr. Umar Johnson to see if we could do a part 2 where he's willing to come on and defend his comments I don't think he would do a good job of doing so, but I'm going to give him that opportunity to do so, right? But we tend to find this a lot with individuals, particularly in the Black community, who are what we will argue purportedly Black-minded, but tend to be extremely left-leaning, where we tend to find that they make these grandiose statements that on the surface sounds good. Oh yeah, absolutely, man, that's messed up. And then you begin to unpack the layers, right? You go 1, 2, 3 questions deep, you find that what they're saying lacks substance. So something to be cognizant of when we talk about having these conversations in our community.
It is a deck of cards. It is a. I'm sorry, Javon. Did you want to go?
Are you good, man?
Okay, yeah. I find that it is a deck of cards. It has little substance, and when soon as you start to pull to the string, the whole thing unravels. It unravels when you start to critique it. But I'm a believer that human beings, adult people, have agency. They have the ability to think for themselves,
Absolutely.
and they have the ability to make good choices and bad choices, and be responsible, or should be held accountable for the choices they make as adult people. As adult people. So I cannot put myself in the blame of a person who makes the decision to have child after child after child. I shouldn't go there. Maybe I shouldn't go there. But I shouldn't be held accountable or responsible for the actions of other adults. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. And that's something I take extreme umbrage with. I'm not responsible for the decisions of an adult, right? People say, oh, we have to be a community. The man did this, the man did that. Sounds good, but I know better, right? And what I know is, hey, you can't make anyone do anything, right? It's hard to make your children do something, particularly if you aren't even in the house with them, right? So we live in a country, one of the freest nations in the world, particularly when it comes to women's rights and women being able to make decisions. So you aren't in any position of power to go in and then make a claim that, hey, you got to do things X, Y, Z. In fact, I was on a Instagram Live. Someone did a show. I tapped in, and the sister was talking about, well, Black men don't protect Black women, but then she gave all these examples of how Black men have protected her in her personal life. So what are we talking about here? But one of the things she talked about was she felt entitled that Black men should just walk her to a car, so on and so forth. And I said, well, a reasonable Black man wouldn't do that, because there could be he could actually be accused of sexual harassment. He could be accused of having a sexist attitude towards a woman to where she needs to be walked to a car and she can't defend herself, particularly on the job.
Unfortunately, that's true, man, and it can happen so fast.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got to really unpack this. So, provide triggers for evolution states. It will be interesting to have a cross-cultural conversation with Panu of the Panu Show from Joe Berg on these matters. Lumumba, you should extend an invite on your show. I will do that. If you could send me the brother's information, put it in the chat, but only under one condition. Sister, you tap in and be part of the conversation. We need you in the conversation.
Yes.
We don't mind if you're timid. We don't mind if you're soft-spoken. It's all love. We just want you to come on and provide and grace us with your divine African feminine energy. Please. Sister Love Ash. But yeah, Sister Love Ash is just to walk her to the car. Sister Love Ash, we can have a private conversation about all the issues I've seen on the job where brothers are being respectful, right? And just doing
it surprised
from a political standpoint, and that they're being called into HR. I've witnessed it myself. Now, it's never happened to me because I know how to keep my head down and mind my own damn business. But I've seen these things actually taking place. So something to be cognizant of. But Sister Love Ash, you're from the 937, living in the 619, so you need to tap in as well. Brother, wisdom never speaks. What say you? Wisdom never sleeps.
You're muted. You're muted if you're talking. Wisdom never sleeps.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right, wonderful. How y'all doing?
Doing just fine.
Okay. Dr. Umar, just like a lot of people, are race hustlers and gender
you took the word right out my mouth. You took the word right out my mouth. Right out my mouth. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, race and gender hustlers. And whenever they need more money, they come to the women. And they have to speak. And that's the same way what politicians do with our people. They divide by leveraging the women because they know most of our women with bad behavior will not take accountability for that behavior. They know women who have a lot of degrees will only go so far having holding other women accountable as well. And I see it all the time. So he made a contradiction when he says it was the mass incarceration that divided the family, took the men out of the house, but the black man is still responsible how the single mothers raise the kids.
Make it make sense.
Right.
But it was
it's almost
Biden's
like
plan to put them out of the house.
yeah.
Now, on top of that, y'all covered about the Black Panthers and things. Well, they was doing WIC and free meals, and that's why they was getting so much support from their own people. So when they dismantled them, the government says, let's take this and give it to those people, and they will listen to us more because we're now giving them free meals and WIC and food stamps and things that was originated by the Black Panther Party. So now you have them more submissive to a people, and their behavior don't have to be in check. So then the black man, there's not a real strong need for him financially if they can just get by and feel like they're in charge, even though being in charge in a predominantly male role actually makes them stressed out.
Yeah, they don't want it.
They don't, well, it's not for them to have. And the thing about it is they won't admit they want to let it go. They won't admit it. The other thing is this. He's talking about there's no real men raising other men, but he never talks about the women mainly tell females to learn how to be a mother first, not a wife. They don't teach them how to be wives first like other cultures.
Yeah, in this country, that's very true, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. That's why you have people in the other cultures say, like the woman said, don't call me strong, call me everything else. Then you want to dress like you want to dress. You want to act like you want to act. What is happening is a great awakening on a lot of levels of our people. And one of the things is there are men finding their voice again, and they're checking women about their behavior. And that's what they don't want to be accountable for is behavior. Just like the kids they raise, they'll fight for the kid even when they're wrong and the kid's got bad behavior. And so we have to understand the mentality is that I want to be called a queen even if I'm a dope fiend, if I'm a prostitute, if I'm a whore, whatever you want to call it, as long as I can be in charge of my life and still have a great man, six-figure earner, a lot of degrees, or provider, protector, but he can never check me on my behavior. But I'm going to still be represented as a queen. I want the jewelry, the bags, all this stuff. My money is my money, and his money is my money. That is the way they're being taught. And the thing about it is the race hustlers and the gender hustlers are on full display at all times. And that's what he's doing because he knows women respond more with their feelings. And if there's somebody can validate the bad behavior and blame the men, then he'll get the reward for it.
Yeah.
All of them do the same thing. When you over here says, if you really a man, the King Kong of consciousness, the Prince of Pan-Africanism, you would never say what you said in that video and blame men for the behavior and lack of accountability of our black women. You would never call them a queen in their behaviors and things like that.
And then let me tap in
You
real
don't do
quick.
that.
Let me tap in real quick. Here's the other issue, because many of us talk about traditional African culture. We know African cultures are not monolithic, particularly before European encroachment, on the continent. However, when we look at pre-colonial African culture, and I kind of cringe when I say pre-colonial because I don't want to discuss African history while bringing in, of course, European occupation of our lands. Historically, traditionally, the men were responsible for the men's behavior, and the women were responsible for the women's behavior. So what he's stating isn't even congruent with African culture.
Correct.
That's what makes it seem like he went into the grifter area to make that money. That internet money hits different, man. The internet money hits different. And if you know that women are highly responsible for a lot of the purchases and believing in these podcasts with the it starts with the Derek Jacksons and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, if you want to jump on that train, you'll make a lot of money. That doesn't mean you're telling the truth, and that doesn't mean you're making these women better, but you will make a lot of money personally.
Okay. Provide triggers for evolution. Once again, sister, we need you to tap in. You're from what? South Africa? By way of J-Berg, I believe. We need you to tap in and be part of the conversation. So you're going to be elevated, you're going to be loved, you're going to be supported here, you're going to be respected. So I want you to tap in and be part of the conversation. Sister Love Ash, need you to tap in as well. Okay, you might be here a lot, but we have a great conversation going on this evening, so we want you to be here. Sister Mary Shy, shout out to 614. We know you're in Columbus. Appreciate you, sister. Met you on But a Dining Show. Want you to tap in as well.
The other thing that he contradicted himself is when he's talking about no men to raise the Pookie and Ray Rays wouldn't be one if they was raising them. But at the same time, with mass incarceration, the child support system where it is, the men are not there or permitted to be there to raise those guys. And when the women are no longer being dated, courted, or loved by those baby daddies, the child is the weapon. So he's not always there to even when he wants to be there. Just giving me my money and leave me alone, and I got the kids legally to do all the decision making. So if the women are doing the raising or bringing up or just loving those men, even when there's mentorship, if the mentors don't want to get involved with the mothers, they pull the boys back from mentorship too. This is facts. This is facts. It really what happens when there's a lot of male mentorship outside of just coaching sports, but a lot of the Boys and Girls Club, they had a lot of mentors and things, adults. A lot of the males stopped because the women, the mothers wanted them to start talking to them, doing stuff for them versus just supporting the mentorship that it was given to the young men. So they had to pull back. And so what is happening is you can't say there's something that caused the men not to be there and then blaming them for not raising the men. That's just so contradictory. That's the grift. You're saying things that are factual, but then you go into things that are feelings to get the money.
It also just seemed disingenuous because he's aware that the system will create gaps on purpose and use sisters in certain cases to help widen that gap. Whether they're making them feel like they're included or they're patting them on the back in certain cases again. He's aware of all this, and he didn't say that. This is why I'm saying, like, it threw me for a loop. Like, man, he's smarter than this, so he's choosing to take this route to preach this type of message now. Because also, like, in the past, he never sounded like this before. You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying, like, the timing and everything, it seems kind of it has a grifter energy to it, and it just threw me off guard.
It's because a lot of men have called him out doing this whole 200-year school thing that he's been doing. So the men have started calling him out. So now you have to grift the women by blaming the men?
Seems tangible.
The other side to that is, if you really want to present your argument that way, show me the males that you have raised and have influence on, and where is your black queen with her ring?
That's a fact. That's a big statement right there. Where's your queen with her ring? Show us how it's done. You seem to have all the answers. Show us how it's done. I never seen his kids before. I never seen his kids. And
Exactly.
it's not to say that I need to see his kids, but I'm saying that you are the purveyor of all things righteous. Show us how it's done. Because
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
I hear
you
you
have
doing is
yeah,
talking.
Well,
you
and
have
also
young man King Randall down in Georgia. You see about his boys all the time that he's doing this school and everything and been doing. You know what their progress is.
yeah.
He
Building
don't
off of
have
that,
any of that.
what you also got to ask, like, well, but before you even really ask a man, like, well, you show us, because to me, it's kind of reactionary. I get what you're saying. I always say like this: you don't have to show me anything. I already have enough evidence sometimes based off of what a person has already shown with the relationships
Yes.
of women. You know what I mean? Or the women that a person has been with, or who they talk to, or whatever like that. Now, I don't know who he's with now. I don't care. But all I know is the evidence that's been shown in front of us on my regular phone. If I scroll through, we've seen two different cases. One recently with a rapper girl, who it seemed like he was entertaining. That's whether he did or he doesn't. It seemed like he was entertaining. And this woman gives off the energy of the very women it seems like he's trying to placate to now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
again, the timing is just everything is odd. I ain't gonna lie, it's odd. You know what I mean? Like, the girl that he entertained the energy, who was saying all kinds of, she's known for saying a lot of lewd stuff. It seems like now he's placating to that type of audience. At least with this interview, this past interview.
Yeah, and also some of the stuff is just it goes into political realms as well when you keep that divide on this level that you think is really community, and you're going to divide that even in voting time, so the collective never wins either.
Absolutely. So,
You have
my trick sister says, I agree that Umar needs to lead by example regarding having or creating a family. Agree. And I also will state once again, you need to tap your behind in on this live and be part of this conversation. You ain't gonna get away. You ain't gonna get away. Okay, you ain't gonna get away. Malfoy X, brother, I need you to tap in as well. Sister Love as I get it, the gender wars are a lot to take in. Exactly why isn't Umar? Because he wants to fool around with messy women, it seems like to me. So, but let's just make sure we are attacking the argument, not the person. Like I said it before, he just made a number of claims that I think were just, well, I'm not saying think that I know are completely false, rooted in hyperbole. But this type of this type of rhetoric, of course, is what allows a lot of men who are out here to ingratiate themselves and have a large female audience because they know they can tell women what they want to hear. And we know by and large, even Black people love to be told what we want to hear rather than what we need to hear, right? And I think that takes a certain level of maturity to put yourself in a position, in a space where you are able to accept someone telling you the truth. Not simply
Yes.
that's what you want to hear, which is that you're the best in some sliced bread, you're colder than Michael Jordan, you could take a year and a half off and come back and still win the championship. No, you're not that good. You need to put work in and be consistent. And then through time and grace and a couple of things going your way, you then could find yourself in a position where you are able to be one of the best in the field of endeavor.
Oh, and by the way, the gender war is fought, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, but the women lost. You know what I mean? Because the when Donald Trump was elected president, that settled the gender war. That settled the whole gender war. And when he came into office, before he came into office, he was talking about grabbing women by the vaginas. He had many, many different kinds of views about women, and more than 50% of 50% of white women voted him in office, regardless of the fact of how they felt about his beliefs prior to him being elected as president. So if it was any gender war prior to that, it has been lost. The women gave their vote to Donald Trump, who was supposedly this misogynistic kind of individual. So whatever the war was, that war has been lost.
I agree. I think that's really more to the detriment of the white women that voted, because black women widely still didn't vote for him. But I do understand your point, man. Like they pretty much kind of shot themselves in the foot while supporting somebody who was openly what they would consider, sexist and very vulgar about a woman's body, and still voting for them on the white area. But for black women, I think that market is still very, very easy to saturate. It makes a lot of money because I don't think we really attacked our issue socially the way it needs to be attacked. Instead, we have different people who come along and they siphon off of the pain from our community, and men and women, and it just keeps the carousel spinning, and it's a cyclical type of issue that never really grounds itself. But again, conversations like this are very important because you have honest people in here on the chat and on the video chat, and in the comments, they actually care, and they're actually adding comments, and we're discussing ways to actually overcome this in a tangible, positive fashion, not just trying to grift, not trying to keep spinning the wheel, you know what I mean, not trying to look like we're trying to pander to one gender or one ideology over another. We're really trying to get to the brass tacks. So again, like, in a nutshell, it's really the black women right now are ripe for the picking, and there's a lot of different people picking from, white, black, all that kind of stuff like that. And then when Umar did that, it seems like that he wanted to kind of jump on that train and get some of that internet money. I'm telling you, it hits different.
But that's facts.
Oh, and but by the way, Lavash, I wasn't having to go at you. You just mentioned gender war. I wasn't having to go at you at all, sister.
A lot of these people got grifts that's been out here a long time. And when they get challenged, then we are the problem, black people or black men. But like I said, more and more men now are calling out this grifting. We're not allowing them to keep allowing or permitting or promoting, pushing, whatever you want to call it, the bad behavior in the community, and even if it addresses the women. And we know they don't like to be addressed direct, because we have been put in our place so long, we've been quiet too long as a collective. Now it's growing, and they're saying, yeah, we want you, we love you, but we don't want your behavior. We don't want the mentality. If you want to be a queen, you must walk in as a queen, dress as a queen. You have to be that.
Absolutely. Real quick, Wisdom Never Sleeps. The African woman, I see that you're in queue, but before I bring you on, I need you to cam up in queue so I can make sure that you're not someone who was trying to engage in some type of nefarious type behavior on the live. So if you could just cam up while you're in queue, then I will bring you into the live. Go ahead. Wisdom Never Sleeps.
Yeah, so politics, our community, everything that more and more men are now deciding, you know what, I'm going to speak about it no matter what. Those are the ones of us that's under attack. And we're not going to waver, on that. That's just the way it is. I can like you. I have 4 sons. They'll tell you the worst thing that I can do for them is sit down to talk to them, because they know what's coming.
Yeah, I respect the fact that nowadays that black men have decided not to accept this boogeyman status, where anything that goes wrong within our community is all our fault. It's always on the black. Well, if anything goes wrong in society itself, people turn to the black man and blame him. And I'm glad that there are more voices coming out of the woodwork saying that's unacceptable. I won't accept this status or the responsibilities that I have nothing to do with. So I appreciate the fact that there are black men standing up and making their voices heard, even if it's unpopular. Because sometimes as men, you could have an unpopular opinion and still stand by it, because if you are right and unpopular, just stand by that. stand by that. Because at the end of the day, people will appreciate the fact that, hey, I was willing to stand on truth rather than just being wanting to be accepted. There's a distinctive difference. But I'll stop there and let the African woman go. That's just stuff.
African woman, go right ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Just let me know if you can hear me. Just really glad to be here and to just hear this conversation. It's very essential, and I wish more people would tap into this. I'm speaking as a Black woman, 16 years this month in the USA, born and raised in East Africa. Um, and just listening to everything that's been said, and just the topic of the discussion that Black men are to be blamed for Black women's poor decisions. First of all, I disagree with the concept simply because I've lived both parts of the world in a time where I've been old enough to understand certain things about life, and I can speak to it in the sense that I've been in, relationships here in the USA, and I mean in Africa while I was much younger. But I've seen all that stuff. I've seen it through my parents, through relatives, and how relationships lead. I think the thing that, and maybe I missed it because I was moving around when all this started, um, is we miss talking about how toxic America is. And I'm not sure if we're just talking about the Black woman across the world, or, I mean, I've heard a few people saying that some people move out to Africa to go and marry out there because they're seeking that specific type of woman or man. But I think we're missing to state the simple fact that America is toxic. And I say this because I've experienced it. I came to America when I was 19 years old. I was very shielded by my family back at home. And I came here, there were all these freedoms to do things. And I think it starts with the family foundation, which is clearly broken in the American society, in the Black society. Um, that's the first thing that I noticed, that the family foundation is just completely broken. So to simply say that you are blaming the Black man for the Black woman's poor decisions is almost, it's biased, because both of these man woman, they're raised within a Black home, and if the home is broken, you're going to produce, you hope you won't, and you pray that you won't. As a single parent, I've been a single parent and I'm still a single parent, and you hope that you're not going to produce children that will follow through that, what they call generational curses. But to put the blame just on the man is not right, in the simple fact that I've had male friends that have full custody of their children, with the woman, the Black woman, paying child support, may or not pay. I've seen some very chaotic Black women, very toxic Black women. And I know a lot of women might attack me for this, but as women, as Black women, we have to start standing up. We keep saying that we are strong women, we're this, and that. But we also have to own up our bullshit. Like, we have to own up the things that we do or fail to do, because those things are clearly happening. We have friends that are doing that stuff, and we choose to hide behind that, and we will sit in a group, and I've been in groups where women sit, Black women sit, and they'll call out a man for his BS, but refuse to address the BS that they're also doing to cause this situation or to ignite and continue the situation. So it's not a one-sided situation. This is a Black man woman situation. We we can't just sit here and just call out the Black man, because, as I said, I know, and this, for me, this was mind blowing. The simple fact that I know at least 6 Black men that have full custody of their children, taking care of their children, was mind blowing to me as a foreigner in this country, after I was told that Black men don't care about their children. But as a statistic, that's a big percentage for me for the number of black men that I know that have children. So it's telling me something, that something is wrong, and we cannot continue to put the blame just on the black man. And as black women, like I said, we need to take ownership. We need to start looking into ourselves, because another thing I'll say to you, I personally know somebody right now that has gone through a divorce with an African born, raised woman that had never stepped into the United States, went out to Ethiopia, got a wife, and brought her here. And within months, she was a whole different person. So we have to look at those things. And I'm talking personally myself as well. It takes a certain kind of person, and I'm grateful to the Almighty for the person that I am, that I have been able to know what I was taught back at home and to see the difference in the environment and all the toxic stuff that I've chosen. It's a choice. It's a life choice. I've chosen to stick to my norms and values, to be that woman that I was raised in, and to see what this country is about and how toxic it is. But back to the person that I personally know that just went through a divorce. His wife, when he brought her here, she completely turned around. So what I'm saying again is we should not fail to address that this is a toxic environment, and it's affecting not just the men, but the women as well. It doesn't matter whether you bring her from Ghana, Nigeria, whatever it is. It really takes the woman inside her to maintain those norms and values. And if these are conversations I have with my parents back and forth at night on the phone, and that Africa is also changing. Things are changing. They're pushing LGBTQ in some aspects, and I'm definitely not speaking against that, but I'm saying how Africa is changing according to where Africa came from. But these things are happening in Africa too. So these are things, as Black people, we need to come together and not just point a finger at the man or the woman. Something is changing, and we got to come together without pointing fingers, and we got to be accountable. Women, we got to be accountable. Men, we got to be accountable.
Any thoughts?
Piggybacking off of what the sister said, that was powerful, by the way. So I appreciate that. I think really what we're saying is, man, we really would like sisters to, the ones that are still disillusioned, because the ones that aren't, they're out here. But the ones that are still disillusioned, still caught up in the matrix, quote unquote, it's really just have awareness. Just be aware that there's something nefarious really going on for your detriment, not a benefit. Even if they make it look like a benefit or whatever little trinkets there is, and the lies and the grifters that help you stay disillusioned, you got to be aware that there's something nefarious going on for your detriment overall. Once you have awareness, I mean, you can start seeing the trees before the woods. You know, it's an old school saying. You can start pulling the wool from over your eyes and really understanding and start really seeing everything and understanding exactly what you got to do just to better yourself. But as long as the media and grifters let you know that there's nothing wrong with you when there might be something that you have to work on, if you keep falling for it, I mean, it's just going to be a repeating cycle. So we just really want awareness of the problem, awareness that something is going on, and then work against whatever it was that was once influencing you.
Any other thoughts?
I don't know. I think that sometimes you can live. There's a possibility that you can live in a society, and a society could be so toxic, you could be affected by that society. I wouldn't dismiss that, but I also have to bring it back to the individual as well. And when the sister spoke about the lady who was brought from Ethiopia, I think, to the States, one might say or think that maybe she was for the streets in Ethiopia before she actually came to the Americas. And when she got into America, that freedom kind of like made it exposed the sister for who she was when she actually got that real reign of freedom. I think that in Africa, maybe there were checks and balances within a community that stopped her from acting in a certain way, even though that was her nature. So I think that when she came to the Americas, where that um that that hedge that stopped her in Africa from behaving in a certain way, when that hedge was removed, I think that she became more of who she actually was. So I don't necessarily know if it was a society or if it was the individual themselves. So I kind of like to take it back to the individual, because you could be in a toxic society and still produce productive, hardworking, honest, and right thinking people. People do it all the time. People do it all the time. So I wouldn't necessarily blame it so much on the society itself, even though the society may be toxic. I think it goes to the individual. And I wouldn't want to. I really hate to remove agency. I think that we get off a lot on removing our own personal agency and blaming everything else but the individual themselves. We are personally responsible for our actions, whether we know it or not. So I wouldn't I hesitant in blaming the greater society because I always like to go back to the individual. But I'll stop there.
I truly respect.
And that's a good point. I'm gonna let you respond, sister. Go right ahead.
Yes, I really appreciate what you just said, my brother. Definitely, like we can never really tell if it's truly psychological, environmental, or any of that on how people behave, because people can be put in chaotic situations and emerge. That's been proven. The thing that I also want to point out as a Black society, and this is something that I've noticed also just sharing from the African perspective, um, the thought of mental health in the Black society is almost like it's a demeaning thing. And we have to accept that mental health situations are real. And people might be pulled from one situation to another and emerge. People might be pulled from one situation and another and just fall apart or do different things that is not according to their character. And these are things that we turn a blind eye to. And I can say this for a fact because just talking to my parents, every time I mention anything about therapy and psychology and all that, it's almost like they don't understand that in Africa, like going to a therapist.
Right.
Right. So those are things that as Black people, we also have to embrace, because some of these situations that we're dealing with the women that cannot maybe submit, or women that act out of character and do certain things, these are considered mental health situations. And saying mental, I guess maybe people feel like they're being labeled by saying these things. But these are things that people experience every day. I've worked with professionals that just go to therapy because they had a long day at work. They go to therapy just because it's a CEO and he just feels pressured and he needs to vent out somewhere. So when people say mental health, I think it throws certain Black people off, thinking that I'm crazy. But it's really not that. And the people that are taking the most advantage of that is the opposite race. And I see a lot of them benefiting from it.
I believe we're looking at it more as a culture historically as insanity more than we need to look at it, which is actually mental management. You know what I mean? Like you were just saying, if we accept it and look at it more as a form of mental management in order to deal with past traumas or present traumas and just life and stress, that's what it's for. You're supposed to be able to mentally manage and create file cabinets to put away different traumas, pains, happinesses, memories. But our community has looked at it as a detriment. Like if you, again, like you said, like the sister was saying, if you say you're going to therapy or you mention therapy, they think one, the church is the answer for everything. Not denigrating any religions in here. I'm just saying, like, we generally look at the church as our end all be all for therapy, and we've seen through time like that's not the answer. Of course,
Hold on, don't set it off in here, Jovan. Don't set it off.
Amen.
Don't set
Amen.
it off.
You better preach, brother. Praise the
What I'm
Lord.
saying is,
Praise the Lord.
what I'm saying is, church is fine, but you still need therapy when you're not at church on Sunday. You know what I mean? Like you could chew gum and walk at the same time. You know what I mean? So with us omitting and really looking at therapy as an actual resource for better mental development and future longevity as a community, we shun it. And I think, like what the sister was saying, that's a problem. It's all in the way that we comprehend and look at what mental therapy is, and it is definitely a resource that can help tremendously.
Absolutely. And very quickly, I want to because I think there's a lot to unpack here. Right, we understand that there's a stigma in the Black community regarding the course of mental health, but I would push back, and I agree. Yes, we do know. Typically, you're told just pray about it, so on and so forth. Right. I mean, one time I told my dad I was seeing a therapist. He said, "Why are you seeing a therapist? You could just pray about it." Right. So this is a real issue. My parents have many of you know. But I'm gonna push back just a little bit. The African woman. I don't believe that when we see our sisters and brothers engaging in what we would call self-defeating behaviors, that is rooted in the mental health, right? I am of the belief that there are some people who simply want to do whatever the hell they want to do. As someone who was a former miscreant, right? I know I was raised by parents who taught me the right things. I went on my own and said, I'm going to do whatever the HE hockey sticks I want. And the consequences that I got were the consequences that I got. It wasn't because my parents raised me in the wrong and did an inadequate job raising me. It's simply that as a parent, you control the process and not the results. So I think that's something to be cognizant of. Now, we can make the argument that this type of behavior is being promoted to the Black community, right? That this is being promoted to the Black community, but I would not argue that this is something that we is due to mental health. So very quickly, Calvin states, if he don't believe in society, then he don't mind LGBTQ laws being passed to advocate for marginalized group. No one live outside of society. Tap in, brother. I'm gonna put the link in the chat, brother Calvin. I want you to tap in, be part of the conversation, so we can really unpack what you're trying to state in your comment. Provide triggers. Once again, you're still here, sister, so we need you to tap in. Please tap in. My question is, who is responsible for transforming Black relational dynamics? Is the domain of Black men as leaders, or is it the domain of Black men and women simultaneously? So I'm going to say this. I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to say this. What we tend to find happen, and I mentioned this in one of my doctoral classes, the last doctoral class I was taking, is that if Black men don't show up and be leaders, we're told that Black women, this is the narrative. I'm not saying this is true, but this is just the narrative. Black women have to carry the weight of the weight of the community on their shoulders. Right, Black women have to be strong. They have to be dynamic. They have to be everything under the sun because Black men aren't doing their job. When Black men take the initiative to be leaders, they're called demeaning. They're called misogynistic. They're called patriarchal. So you tend to find a situation in which toxic. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I'm assuming dismissive of that, right? I'm of the argument of, hey, if you are a man who believes in being a leader, you have to just lead, right? You can't be going around being concerned about what the society is saying or what particular groups are saying. You have to do what you believe is best. I'm going to give an example. As you know, my daughter's a teenager now. And what you tend to find when you have children, and brother, wisdom never sleeps, you can speak to this. At some point, you say, I don't give a damn what my children think. I don't care what society thinks. I'm in the command decision, and I'm going to make decisions based on what I believe is in the best interest of my children. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely 100% correct.
And the same thing applies to when we are moving in society. Not everyone's going to agree with a Black man who's coming from a Black-centered perspective, stating or taking actions that we believe is in our best interest of the community. Right? No one agreed with Malcolm totally. Dr. King, the whole nine. Right? That's just not how it works. So that's something that I do. I would implore other brothers to do the same. Lastly, I want to bring this up because, I always try to bring in scholarship. We had this conversation. So this is an old book, 13 years old, Introduction to Black Studies, 4th edition by Dr. Malana Karinga. And there's a section in here where he talks about Black male-female relationships, right? He talks about the ancient African sources of black-female relationships. He talks about feminist discourses. He talked about Queen Mother Anna Julia Cooper. In fact, I'm going to do a show on Queen Mother Anna Julia Cooper because she's one of the oftentimes, I would even argue, underappreciated leaders of the early Pan-African movement. But one of the things he talks about, some of the concerns that we tend to find, even to this day, regarding black male-female relations, is the tendency towards monolithic and reductive characterizations of black men. Number two, the failure to contextualize the problem and critique race, class, and gender relations in the context of anti-black oppression, subordination of race, community, and collective issues to gender and personal ones rather than linking them in mutual beneficial ways. So you see the lack of intersectionality. Number four, consciously or unconsciously providing the established order and races in general with negative images of black men, women, and families, which they appropriate and use to their advantage against us. Number five, the failure to develop an Afrocentric approach to the question of male-female relations and thus over-reliance on white feminists for both essential categories and concepts. And last but not least, number six, the unwillingness to be self-critical and self-corrective, moving from an overabundant discourse on victimization and oppression to one of agency and the practice of freedom and self-determination. So once again, this is page 274 in Introduction to Black Studies, 4th edition, where he talks about these are the type of patterns, some of the core tenets we find in what the mainstream discourse on black male and female relations. Right, the overabundance of what victimization, unwillingness to be self-critical and self-corrected, a lack of having these conversations under the context of what oppression. We saw that with the movie the color purple, right? So we still see these type of things taking place today. But once again, I'm gonna open it up. Sister, provide triggers for evolution. Once again, sister, I know it's probably extremely early or late in South Africa, but hope that you can still tap in and be part of the conversation. It'll be greatly appreciated. Once again, if you're watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the notification bell. And if you could, please bless us via Cash App or, of course, the super chat so we could keep the channel up and running. Queen Lonnie says there's honestly a difference between black American men and black African men. Relationships are different on the continent. This is true. Want you to tap in, sister, be part of the conversation. You can share with us your perspective on how the relationships are different. So once again, the link is in the chat. What say you all?
Prof, I have a question. Now,
I didn't do it, but go right ahead.
Now, being a historian, should Dr. Karenga be talking on subjects in terms of relationships between black men and women? I mean, this is a question I got. That's a question.
So I would say this, because we know what took place back in the 70s, right? Number two, from a scholarly standpoint, this is an introductory text on black scholarship. So from that perspective, yes. Now, has he gone out and written, from what I know personally, on these type of conversations, these type of issues? No. But all he's simply doing is what? Reciting and reviewing the scholarship on the subject matter. Right? So I think that's number one. The second issue is, I remember I had a class, one of my students asked me this last semester, that they believe that only a black person or a person of African descent should teach an Africana Studies course. And I said, I understand from an emotional standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, that that's what you would desire. But I said, I've been in the academy for a while, and I have had white professors that were able to teach the course from a critical standpoint, from an African-centered standpoint. So it is possible, but I also understand that you will feel more comfortable with someone who is of your same racial ethnic background.
Or someone who probably had a good dynamic between a black man and a black woman. Yeah, I would say. I
will say what took place 50 years ago.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's very true.
And he served his time. So Sister Love asks, but why are they teaching the course? Well, here's the issue. When you get to higher ed, it's all about credentials. So if a person has a degree or a PhD in African American history or Black studies or African studies, they're going to hire that person, particularly if they had a publication that's shown that they have done high level research on the subject matter. So that's just how it works in higher ed. They're not going to hire someone just because of your race. You have to have the credentials and then show that you're able to actually move the discipline forward in terms of developing knowledge and scholarship in that discipline. So just something to be knowledgeable of, to answer your question, Sister Love Ash.
I want to answer Provide Trigger's question, because she put a question to me in terms of patriarchy in other cultures. I think that in the Caribbean, she may be referring to the Caribbean. I think that the reason why patriarchy is so strong here is because of the religion, and if you go to different places like Haiti, where the Catholicism is very strong, a lot of the Spanish-speaking Caribbean countries where Catholicism is big over there, I think patriarchy is central to the culture itself. I think that because in the Americas, it used to be patriarchy, used to be at the center of things, but via the feminist movement and the fact that there are certain freedoms, you could be anything you want to in America. You could move to a different state and become whatever you want to. I think that what holds the glue that holds the American society is a little bit different than what holds these so-called Caribbean countries. I think that the glue that holds American society is really money. It's not necessarily the religion, it's money. That's the base. So from that, they build off of that. So you don't necessarily have to fit in this whole patriarchal structure. A woman could make hundreds of millions of dollars without even listening to a man ever. As long as she has the capacity to do a particular job or whatever, she's in there. She could. There's glass ceilings and all that. But when it comes to these so-called Caribbean countries, I think that the religion is, these societies are so steeped in religion. I think it holds a lot of women ideologically in certain places. And women buy into it. It's not the fact that the men push it. Many of the women buy into it. In fact, all the women teach younger women to buy into that structure. And the idea is the family and God, and the man at the center, and then the woman, and then the children, and things like that. Women buy into it. So I think that's the difference. I feel. I could be wrong, but that's what I perceive it as. The children, and things like that. Women buy into it.
So Sister Queen Lonnie says African men lead and want to lead is in their DNA. Overall, their morals and core values are just better. Once again, sister, if you could tap in and really unpack, that way we can unpack what you're stating. I know you're responding to P-Funk 100. Let us know what values are you speaking of regarding African American men and African men on the continent, continental African men. So that's definitely want to get what you're going there. I think part of your comment is rooted in hyperbole. We tend to find men throughout the world tend to have, overall on a macro level, tend to have an impetus or impulse to lead, and not only at home but in their community. So I think we need to be very careful when we start making claims like that. Once again, that are what monolithic in nature about particular groups of people, because it tends to be rooted in intellectual laziness, and those claims are easy to deconstruct, right? So there's something to be cognizant of. It says black American men are West and Central African descendants, so they have African DNA. So if it's in their DNA, then they are leaders as well. Great point, Sister Shai. That just made my point, right? It's easy to deconstruct these arguments. Thanks, Bawana. Your response makes much sense. So this is the question I would ask you, Brother Bawana, because I'm an atheist, right? But I'm very patriarchal.
Yes, but you like me, whether we want to admit it or not. We come out of a rich church tradition, and that culture has been very, very influential in terms of child rearing, in terms of manhood, in terms of responsibility. All these other things coming out of whether we want to admit it or not, and coming out of that church tradition.
So let me ask this question, because I don't think it has much of an issue with me for me. So are you saying that if religion is removed, men won't be patriarchal?
No, because you have I'm saying that what's happened to us. That's what I'm saying. I'm
The
not.
reason I guess the reason, if I could
Go ahead, brother.
expand, is because we find African culture prior to what the advent of the Ma'afa, right? The African Holocaust of colonialism, imperialism, racism, and slavery being patriarchal. That's what I'm trying to.
No, I'm not. We in the Caribbean, we had things before the church. We had so-called friendly societies. What's that noise coming? What's that noise?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that might be wisdom. Wisdom never sleeps. You might have to
Okay.
mute his mic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that we had friendly societies. We had what's the lodges and things like that. They wasn't necessarily religious minded, but these were men coming together to work within a community to do specific things. Now I could point to that and say, well, this has nothing to do with Christianity. Yeah, these are men within the society and the community. But this, in that instance, I think that what I would say is everyone had a particular role in those kind of communities where men had specific roles they needed to meet and women had the rules. Prior to that, you had the plantation system, which is a whole other feature. It's a whole other feature because we learned from that experience as well, whether we want to admit it or not. And that feature used to be patriarchal as well in the Caribbean. That feature, that plantation system is extremely patriarchal. You know what I mean? And that was influential in a lot of the minds of these Caribbean folks around here. So I think that a lot of these things that we probably took on. I'm not dismissing the Africanisms that we brought here from West Africa. I'm just saying that all these things created like a melange.
And I hear what you're saying, but the reason why I push back against that, because you got me thinking of Bell Hooks in her book We Will Cool, where she argues that black men became patriarchal because they learned this from the white oppressors, but she dismisses the fact that African cultures are extremely patriarchal. So what we find if you study culture anthropology is patriarchy is the norm around the world.
So are you saying that now you're the historian, African historian? So are you saying that in African societies there was no matriarchy?
In African societies, the societies were patriarchal. The heads of state, the people who of big affairs, they were ran by men. Right. And in fact, hold on. Because I just did a show on this brother, this great ancestor of ours who was a warrior scholar and historian. He's my favorite historian, Walter Rodney. He talks about this in detail in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
So Dr. Lumumba, no, Brother Lumumba, not doctor yet. So how were chiefs or kings or whatever chosen? They were chosen through the matrilineal line. Is that right or wrong?
Well, I think what we have to understand is matrilineal is different from being what? Matriarchal.
That's true.
Right. That's just lineage. Right. And according to Walter Rodney, and there's a couple other books I have here on African societies, what we found was that black women had a higher level in society prior to Europeans coming in and taking control. There was a space for black women to be able to develop, particularly in Western Central Africa. I'm not talking about South Africa, but Western Central, and that is the basis of Walter Rodney's work. There was a basis for them to have economic empowerment, right? And the second issue was politically elite women were able to be in positions of power, but these are positions that were symbolic. For example, the Queen Mother, that's a symbolic position, right? But the societies were ran and controlled by men. The heads of state were men, right? The men of big affairs, the leaders of armies, et cetera, were the men. So I'm stating this to say that was the norm, right? And we find this cross-culturally, even before Europeans became a world power. If you study world history, societies have always been patriarchal because the men were the ones who were actually built the societies and civilizations.
So I have a question. I hope I'm buttressing the whole kind of conversation. So in African spirituality, you have gods and you have goddesses,
Yes,
female
we have
gods,
duality. Yes.
duality. I'm asking if the heavens, or what they used to perceive as the heavens in terms of divinities and things that I used to worship, was based on almost on an equal footing. You had gods and goddesses. Wouldn't that have been reflected in the daily life of the African societies?
Well,
Why would, like you say, the idea of Queen Mother was solely a symbolic one? I
it
have to
was.
check that out. So so are you saying that she had no power then?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a symbolic position, and this is what I learned from Dr. Opalad Okia, who has his PhD in early African history and was the head of the Black Studies program at Wright State University. This is what I learned in the class. It's the literature that I read. I still have the books behind me here. Like, that's just the reality situation. I know what the theology was, but I'm also looking at what was actually practiced. In fact, Walter Rodney states, and I could quote verbatim, that in pre-colonial African societies in Western Central Africa, Black women were exploited for their labor. He states this verbatim in his text. So I mean, it's just that patriarchy is the norm around the world. In fact, if I remember the last time I checked, there are probably 8 societies or clans or ethnic groups in the world that are patriarchal. And I think there's only 2, matriarchal, and there's 2 in Africa. One, I believe, is in Kenya, and another is in West Central Africa. So we see that this is not the norm throughout human existence.
But what you are not saying is that some societies were not led by a female monarch. You're not saying that.
I'm sorry?
Like some Africans, like Yasantua and all these other female monarchs. You know what I mean? In some societies, you're not saying that. Even though she was at the head, the society itself was still patriarchal.
Well, what I'm saying is, when they were at the head, the Santawas, right, the Nzingas, that was a deviation from the norm, right? That was as a result of there not being a man there to take that position, right? There's a great book I have on, I think it's called Female Husbands and Male Daughters, but it talks about how women in early and pre-colonial African societies would take on the roles of men if there weren't men available to take on those roles. That's the central thesis of the text. And they were taking on male roles that were centered in position in leadership and decision-making in the society.
But what? Okay, so if Yasantua and Queen Nzinga had men under her fighting for her, why wouldn't it have been possible that someone would just sit in the seat and have her sit down and take orders? It's like we can't find any man around, but it's all a bunch of different men around. I mean,
so in the case with Yasantua, and I'm familiar with the case because she actually led the war to Golden Stool at the age of 60. Actually, she, according to legend, the men, particularly the one who was on the throne, who was the head of state, were willing to capitulate to the British. And she was the one, because she was a member of the royal family, who said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. And she was able to galvanize, right? We could argue that this is Anne Frank, right? This is like the African version, not of Anne Frank, but of, what's the white woman who was burned at the stake? What's her name?
Oh,
Anne Boleyn. What her name is?
No, she
I know you're talking
about the war.
Paris. Yeah.
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc. Yeah. So there's like an African Joan of Arc situation, right? To where, hey, something's going on, no one's stepping up. She takes the lead and she's courageous in battle. Only difference is we didn't burn our own sister at the stake, right? Joan of Arc. Yeah, I learned about that in school before I learned about Yasantua. That's the miseducation Dr. Carter G. Woodson was talking about, right? So, but I'm just saying, this is the history. And that's why I always tell people, if you actually learn African history, you will learn that African culture was patriarchal long before Europeans got there. In fact, the European colonizers stated that one of the things that surprised them was that they realized that one of the things that African cultures had in common with European cultures were the fact that they were patriarchal.
Yeah, but so my question becomes, what about the Queen of England? What about Queen Victoria? All these, and I mean, they sat in the seat of power, and it wasn't no king at the time. I don't think it was a king at the time with Queen Victoria. She was the ultimate person who was at the head of England. So I mean, is that a would you that you would consider that to be a patriarchy, which is actually still led by a woman?
Well, I try not to, examine European cultures like that. But
Okay,
I would say that yes, the society still was patriarchal.
okay, okay.
And if we think about the situation in Europe, I know at least maybe the past 100, maybe 200 years, it's been a constitutional monarchy, which the person who's the monarch that's actually a ceremonial role, right? They don't actually make any decisions. That falls on the prime minister and of course parliament.
Yeah, you don't want to confuse the society with just a moment in time of leadership or someone sitting at the realm.
Mm-hmm.
So the patriarch society has always been there.
Right.
Even though you might have some queens come up, some female warriors and things like that, their whole society in of itself was never matriarchal. They had some leadership. They was crowned. They took over because they combated. You have some queens, some presidents now in Africa and things like that. But the ruling society, the builders of it, the scalpels, the roads, and all this stuff, that's what makes it patriarchal even
I got it.
today, because the
Yeah.
women are not doing all these jobs that are the most dangerous jobs, that is the glue that holds the society and countries together.
And if I could, very quickly, Sister Love Ash talks about offering skills and wisdom. Absolutely. So when you have a patriarchal environment situation, the woman, she's treasured counsel, right? A man wants to be with a woman who has a brain, who can think, who's
Correct.
articulate, who's able to be a critical thinker, because he's going to want to hear what she has to say. But at the end of the day, and I've always stated this, and it has nothing to do with religion for me, just lived experience. I know based on lived experience that at the end of the day, if anything goes bad, if there's ever a command decision that needs to be made, the person's gonna look to you and say, "Well, you're the man." No matter how, in my experience, no matter if the woman's a super feminist, an intersectional feminist, a fourth wave feminist, at some point she's gonna say, "Well, you're the man. What you gonna do?" And so I had the Kobe Bryant type mentality. If I'm gonna be blamed for us losing the game, I'm taking the final shot.
Right. Right.
That's just my mind. It has nothing to do with religion. It's just my lived experience has taught me to be like Kobe.
You're gonna blame me anyway.
You're gonna blame me anyway, so I might as well shoot that mother flood pucker.
Yeah. It's just like a lady keep blaming the man for cheating. Eventually he gonna say, you know what, you've been blaming me for this for 20 years. Either I'm gonna leave you or I'm gonna go out there and do it.
Yeah.
So, you're gonna blame me anyway, and nothing I can tell you. But going back to when you talk about the Queen of England and stuff, you got to remember they changed all that to the prime ministers and their Congress. They don't call it that. So laws and things are written that way. A lot of these people are just still symbols of what once was. And so a lot of times, even the people that was queens and stuff, they got a lot of advice still from men that was warriors and things like that. They still got that counsel because they needed to know how things was ran, even though they might have made a different decision.
Mm-hmm.
Still at the core of that, the society was built by the men, their leadership and their vision, their wars, their struggles.
Mm-hmm.
The women supported them. And I want to say this, some of us talking about the submissiveness of women. The problem with people with this word, women being submissive, the women themselves and men do not understand what that word means. When a woman submit to her ultimate femininity, not to the man itself, to her femininity, her role as a feminine female, she is in her power at that point. And she will always subtract the masculine man. The feminine that's what she has to submit to. Men have to submit to the masculine. That's what submissive really is. Has nothing to do with you just bowing down to a man. It's that you're out of your way as a feminine woman. This is why so many of them now can't get out of that masculine role, and they want to take charge and they have the last word and things like that. Well, they're not trying to submit to a man anyway. They need to submit back to their femininity. And once they do that, they'll be in line with the power that they possess.
Right.
I have to jump in on that. You spoken word. Amen. Um, I wish a lot of women would understand submission, what it really is. Submission is power.
Hmm.
It's powerful to a woman. Like you can be an alpha submissive woman. I I I can't even dig deeper into that. I think that's a whole different talk show. But that right there is what I try to preach to my lady friends. Like submission does not mean you're giving power to the man and surrendering and being a slave to him. Submission should be something that actually gives you power, and you feel powerful when you do it. And once you grasp that concept and you apply it and you do it, you lock that man in.
That's right.
Is that what you're trying to do, African? You trying to lock him in? You trying to lock him in?
Oh, you got to lock them in.
Well, and I would say this: I've engaged with some feminine women, and it blew my mind. Like she's not lying. Like it's easy. Like she got me. I don't even want to go. Matter of fact, when you're dealing with women like that who are moving in divine feminine energy, you want to run home from work. You're running from work to the house.
You gonna walk.
Literally, like you're running from
you
work.
walking.
You want to be in the home.
You walking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is why the most of them today has been programmed to think their power is in taking over in the masculine way and being, the B boss and all this stuff. And the realization is they don't understand what true femininity is. They haven't been taught that. And
Yes.
once they can been taught, receive it, and not think they're taking a backseat to anyone, the reality is that's part of a kingdom structure. Their true femininity is heard and seen and felt and smelled and all that by the true masculinity.
Yes.
That's what becomes his secondary foundational power for him.
Yes.
And he will protect that at all cost. That's what providing protection of the masculine comes from. He's protecting the power of his feminine queen, whatever you want to call it. That's what he's protecting, which goes over into the children. The children now sees the right relationship in front of them, and they aspire to have the same and will not settle for anything less.
And contradictory to that, you got a lot of young ladies who, like you said earlier, grew up without the image or role model of what femininity is from
Yes.
generations prior that still, of course, want and are asking for, almost at this point, demanding the same protection or the same type of reserve from men as women who are feminine. And that's where, we kind of have like a little mix up.
Yeah, and they used to say, well, grandma and them, they was just weak and this and that. They don't understand the new woman. And I always say this: how is it that today's modern female can still want, desire, ask for, and request the what do they call it? The oh gosh, I can't think of the word. What they want, that the original man. They want the same kind of man, but they want to be a different kind of woman, and that yoke will never.
Traditional men.
Traditional
Thank
man,
you.
non-traditional
They
women.
want traditional men, but they want to be a modern woman, and I keep telling them all that will never ever work under this sun and this moon. It will never happen. You cannot be a modern woman and want a traditional man. You cannot be a modern man, effeminized, emasculated, and want a traditional woman. It does not work. It will never happen. You have to have your yin and yang in the right place. So if you want a traditional man, You have to dive head first, feet first, roll over, whatever, back into your femininity, your true feminine role. And that there's a lot of men out there waiting on you because still over 50% of men not married, childless, and anything else. They don't have any kids, no baby mama drama. So there's still a lot of traditional men understanding what their roles are and what they're looking for. And now that the most of them speaking up, calling out the bad behavior, that's the problem. So Dr. Umar wants modern women, but he wants the traditional men to take care of the modern woman. So the modern woman can convince the man to give him more money too.
Sister Trina, what say you?
I personally feel that it's a lot of blaming each other. I think the problem is we don't believe in family anymore in the Black community today. What I'm seeing is what they're saying, a hookup culture or a shack up culture. We need to get back to being family, because I think Pookie and Ray Ray is a product of no family structure. And if we don't get back to family morals and values, anything of that nature, you're just going to continue to have this Pookie and Ray Ray. The cycle is just going to continue, because we have to ask ourselves, why do we have Pookie and Ray Rays in our communities? Or why do we have Shaniquas in our communities? It's simple. No family structure.
I'm gonna push back against that a little bit, sister. You're always gonna have people who are socially deviant in any society, right? Because no society is a utopia, right? And I said this at the top of the show, the oldest written criminal justice text that we know of in human history comes from Mesopotamia. It's known as the Code of Hammurabi. So you're always going to have individuals in any society at any time in the world history who are going to be engaging in socially deviant behavior, even if you have great institutions, great family structures, etc., because we control what? The process, not the results.
Just like you have fire and water. And the thing about it is the water keep rising, the fire, they keep putting more fires out there. But eventually the water will put it out.
But look at it like this. Compare children that grow up in good family structures to the children that don't grow up in good family structures. Most of the time, the kids that grow up in good family structures turn out fine in society, and they usually make it. It's the ones that come up with in bad family structures that end up losing a lot of times in the end. Now you have the rags to riches story. You have stories like Jay-Z, who didn't grow up with a father in the project, and now look at where he's at. He's a billionaire. We have those type of stories. But when most children grow up with good family households, they usually turn out great.
So you're talking about, like, currently you just mentioned Jay-Z, but you also now have Ja Morant, two-parent household, parents still there, father still there by the side, but he's doing foolish things, even though he's a millionaire and he's supposed to be the face of something and looking at other kids. So he's a lot of times you can have a two-parent household with the best intentions of a child, and it could be outside influences.
Yes.
That takes him down a path, or you can have other siblings that they don't think they're getting enough love, even though they're getting the same thing, and they can just go off because it's 10 kids now, and we got one of us got to be bad. We don't want to be all good. I'm tired of this goody, because I don't like nobody telling me that all the time. So I need to do something bad to make me look more street credible. So a lot of times it's not just having a two-parent house. Yes, it's better, but also it's the numbers show that even the single father raises their kids better than the single mom.
And unfortunately, in the young brother John Morant's case, there was a lot of influence from his mother's side, unfortunately, and having him come and do things that could jeopardize his career, like coming down to a shoe store and getting in a fight, or trying to procure a fight between one of the guys that worked at Foot Locker because the mother had a dispute with him. And instead of calling anybody else, I mean, even the father, security, whatever, she calls her son, who's already in the NBA. So again, that's just an example of he grew up middle class, but there were still issues within his house. Now, we're not negating the fact of what she was saying as far as statistically, you're correct, sister. But there's definitely anomalies and exceptions to every rule. And speaking about John Morant, it was friends and family that helped him make these poor decisions, unfortunately.
Well, I'm glad you used the word decisions because I get tired of people talking about mistakes. Thank you for using the right word.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it's like I was saying earlier. To me, it's just a lot of finger pointing. And from what I'm hearing from the men, even with that video with Dr. Umar Johnson, it seems like a lot of the men are just like, I'm tired of a lot of the men are tired of the women, the sisters choosing pookies. It's like it's more like, well, you women today are just making too many bad choices. Why are you not choosing the good men? Why are you keep on choosing these Pookie and Ray Rays?
I'm gonna tell you why. The men that's really trying to do it right is the women would choose Pookie and Ray Ray the same way a person will use excuse not to take a good job because it's more responsibility, meaning that you have to make some changes. Pookie and Ray Ray don't require you to change the behavior you already set in.
Right.
But the quality men, the traditional man, will not accept you with the behavior you bring into the table, with the baggage from other relationships. What I was talking about earlier, you haven't went into any counseling, any therapy, from any traumas from your childhood. And you keep just going relationship to relationship. And this is why they can choose the so-called Pookie and Ray Ray, because Pookie and Ray Ray don't require anything but your body. And
Right.
if you can let them live halfway free on you for what you have, this is why they are choosing them. It's not because that's the only thing available, but because they don't want to address and be accountable and responsible for their own behavior and changing that. That's the fact.
It's almost like there's a choice of stimulation over substance.
Yes. Yes. That's why the Democratic Party give you some simulations versus substance. They give you things that you can feel good. But the truth of the matter is that, in other words, if I've created my household a certain atmosphere, I'm not going to just let anybody upset that. I don't care who they are, what lineage, what bloodline. Once I put my oldest brother out because he tried to change the atmosphere in my own home. You're not going to bring that there.
Right.
I put my sons out twice because I don't do, that's not going to happen. Now, if I tell people you can't smoke in here, just because I think I'm just lonesome or something like that, I'm gonna let you smoke because you think I'm just gonna welcome you in. That's a decision on me allowing bad behavior just because I want to belong with someone. That's crazy. So we can't keep saying they're choosing just a Pookie and Ray Ray. The fact of the matter is they don't require you to elevate yourself. They don't require you to walk in your femininity, walk in your queenship. They don't require you to do that. They're not going to challenge you on that. They got someone that's going to let them get by, lay up, eat a little free, whatever it takes, run around, because you yourself, as a female, don't want to check or be checked by the men that you really want. So that's why you end up with Pookie and Ray Ray, John, whoever.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reality.
I agree.
They get with people like that because what? There's no accountability. You have nothing to worry about.
Let me tell you an example real quick. One of my sons, when he was younger, and we was at a mall, and he said, "Well, you know that girl right there." She said she really did like me. She was running the stores, running the retail store. I said, "Well, why didn't you talk with her?" Well, she was always talking about doing this and going here and going to college and stuff like that. And I just didn't, want to do that. I said, oh, she was asking you to be a better man because she liked you, but she was telling you where she was going and you didn't want to step your game up. step your life up, and so you let a good woman go by. See, I checked him too. That doesn't matter. I knew he wasn't going to step his game up to the level of where she was trying to go, trying to be. And so she couldn't keep just, she moved on. She kept it moving. So everybody don't settle for the Pook and Ray Ray when the Pook and Ray Ray is not going to be what they're trying to be.
Absolutely.
I just want to chime in on that. Definitely agree on what you've said, that, but I just want to touch back onto the simple fact that some situations are really situational. The simple choice of picking a Pookie, Ray Ray, or whatever. Some of those are choices that people make, like you just described it. 100%, I agree with you. But touching back to situations that we tend to not want to face, that some of these situations could be an abusive situation. And I think we tend to look at abuse as physical, and we don't really look at abuse as mentally and psychologically in that aspect, that why is this certain person, and sometimes you find these women in professional jobs and all that lean towards their Pookie and Ray Ray. And nobody can describe why. And they might even come from a good home. Parents been married 60 years, everything going good. They're in the church and everything. And we don't tend to pay attention to that. So I just want us to be very sensitive to that aspect as well. And also bring it to light that these things are also going on, that these situations are going on, that we might have all these Black men and Black women that seem professional and everything, but deeply inside, something is not okay psychologically, that they choose to pick the people that they pick. And the question is, what are we doing about it as a society? Because, okay, we're talking about all this, like this is a great conversation that we're all having right now. And I was just out there on my LinkedIn, and I've seen like a father and son have put a financial wellness program for the summer program for Black young men and women. And it's amazing, but aren't these things that we need to address and put programs out there and put conversations there? But the question is, how do we pull our people into these conversations so that they can hear these things and receive them and share their experiences? Because sometimes people are just really out there alone. And I'm talking from experience because I've been in that kind of place. I've been in that dark place before where I didn't know where to go or who to talk to. And I came across certain people that opened me up to that. And that's why I'm in conversations like this. Sometimes you need somebody to pull you up. It doesn't matter how much money you're making, how professional you look. People are going through things. And I think that is very important for us as Black people to acknowledge that some people are psychologically going through certain things that we may not understand, that they lean on to a Pookie and a Ray Ray.
I don't disagree with that, but it also goes back to, first of all, if I see that I'm keep going through that same cycle of people, then I need to say, why am I keep making that selection? What is it about me, within me, that I've suppressed, hidden, locked away, that keeps me drawing those type of people or going to making that selection? And so it's just like when we air out the collective African American, Black people, whatever you want to call us, a problem, an issue. Why y'all saying that? We should really show this behind closed doors. Okay, so first of all, we got to recognize we do have an issue, and somebody bring it out. And then if they ask you, well, sister, why do you keep doing them kind of men? You can't say all the time, well, hey, I choose what I want to. I live my life. You got to sometimes stop and say, what? Why do I?
I found out that some of that can be there's three main things that I found. It could be socialization of what you grew up around and what you've seen as a model of what you think masculinity is or the man you should choose, or it could be excitement via the unpredictability and the mannerisms of the man and what she believes might be masculine based on things that she's seen off of TV, hyper masculinity, different images from BET, MTV, or action movies, or like certain hood movies that might excite them. Or the last one could be control via mental manipulation of, like you said earlier, brother, somebody who you deem is mentally your inferior. So therefore, if you get with that person, they almost become a pet project. So you like the control, you like to be in the captain's seat.
Matter of fact, if I could, I'm gonna tap in very quickly because this is something that Dr. T. Hassan Johnson talks about. And we all have heard of the term son husbands, right? This is when the mother has the son be the emotional husband, but there's also something known as the husband son. This is when women who are doing well professionally, academically, and of course socioeconomically purposely pursue men of a lower socioeconomic level, right?
Exactly.
So that they can dictate and dominate the relationship. Also, if the man is of a lower socioeconomic level, that is inferred or there's a belief that he isn't as intelligent, doesn't have the credentials, he hasn't gone as far in life, and therefore he's not in a position to be a leader or hold the woman accountable for her actions or behavior.
Yes.
So this is something that we see as well when we talk about the husband-son epidemic. I actually think I did a show on it a couple weeks ago on the husband-son epidemic. So these are real issues that we find where women are saying, hey, I got my ish together. I got my own job. I got my own car. I got my own bag. I own a home. I got my own business. I'm this, that, and the third, and all of the above. Then they make the conscious decision to say, I'm going to pursue a man of lower status so that I can wear the pants in a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah. You need a live-in sex doll that can open up pickle jars and smash spiders for you.
Right. You're nothing but in the glass. So these are things that actually take place. And it isn't because there aren't a large quantity of available suitable black men. It's simply that people have the right to make whatever decisions that they want. And this is what some people are choosing to have. It's that simple.
That's right. It's decisions. And not only that, when you have in our culture lately, is when you raise the female to be a mother first, that's the dynamic she carries into a relationship.
Come on.
This is why she chooses men that are lesser, because then she can always be the last word, the final word, like a mother with a child.
Right.
And this is why some men get aggravated about that. And that's why some men can also stay in a child's role, because you're going to take care of them and they can put up with a little bossing around like they did Mom from Home.
Yeah.
So
and you can hear about how they talk to them.
Yeah.
You can hear about how they talk to them. Yeah.
Yes. And so because you've been raised to be a mother first versus a wife, once you get into a role of you leading and doing your household and you're bringing the bread home and stuff, you don't want another man to have that equality or higher than you, because then you have to check yourself, because you're still outside of your femininity a little bit. You're just outside of it. You don't want to cook. You don't want to clean. You want to do anything. I'm going to dry cleaners. I'm going to eat out. I want to do all what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be responsible for being a wife to nobody, even though I want a big wedding and I might want to be married. But I'm not going to be a true wife. I'm going to be an independent woman with a ring on my finger.
Wow.
Right. And shout out to the Hood Haitian for the super chat. Appreciate it, y'all. Definitely need the love on the super chat, the Cash App, to keep the channel going. Hood Haitian says, stop the cap. Immigrant black women don't pick bad in their home country, but all of a sudden pick bad in USA. Hold black feminism accountable. So Hood Haitian 305, shout out to Zopound, by the way. If you could tap in, I'm gonna put the link in the chat. If you could tap in and really unpack what you mean by that. I don't want to infer what you're stating or what you mean by that comment. So if you could tap in rather quickly, and once again, you don't have to cam up, but I definitely want to really unpack what you mean by that when we talk about hold black feminism accountable. Go right ahead, Brother Javon. Or was that wisdom never sleeps?
You know, one thing about the countries is he referring to, I guess, whether it's Haitian African countries, if the women don't pick bad majority of the time, it's because those males are always brought before the fathers or the men in the village. That's still part of what's going on today, unlike here in America. So that's one of the reasons why you may feel they don't really pick that bad, because there's men telling them about the man they bring into the house or to the village before you get jumped off, into this long-term marriage. And a lot of times also, because it's more community, they usually pretty much know what kind of male is out there anyway, from what family, what background, before they let their daughter just go off and be with just anybody. So that structure of community is still there to give their opinion, and they value the opinion of the adults in the community or in their household. Here, you just run off and want to do what you want to do, because your mom, a single mom, or dad, they're doing what they want to do also.
Right. What she saying, baby boy? Mama gotta have a life too.
Mama gotta have a life. Yes.
I also think the reason why a lot of women, like the black women, choose Pookie and Ray Ray too is because a lot of us got this. Well, all the good men are taken, so a piece of man is better than no man, and we got that complex where we rather be with a piece of man than no man, because being lonely or being by ourselves really just hurts a lot of us. And since women are emotional, they rather put up with some man and they BS than just to be by themselves and be at peace.
Sister, I think that's a lazy mentality, and I also still feel like that's a scapegoat for them not having to stand on their square and be accountable of themselves in the face of a man who's doing just that also.
I'm sorry, but I have to agree with that as a woman. I appreciate my black women and I support y'all, but some of this stuff is like we can't keep hiding behind loneliness. And I'm speaking from a place where I've been lonely before. And you just don't, it's a choice you're making. You see who you're picking. And I've seen situations where you pick somebody and you know it's a Ray Ray. And then 6 months down the line, you're demanding all these things. Now you have a child with a Ray Ray, and you're demanding all these things from him that you knew from the beginning that he didn't have. You're demanding child support from a Ray Ray that you knew he didn't have a job from the beginning. So it's a fact that we have to be accountable as Black women. Loneliness is not an excuse to making bad choices, because those bad choices fall onto our children, and then we tend to call them generational curses.
Yeah.
We're creating the generational curses. We're creating this wave of distraction in the Black community. We as adults are making choices, and some of our choices, unfortunately, are destroying us.
That's why Kevin Samuel said modern women, they wreck their own homes. He said modern women are the home wreckers. They're wrecking their own homes. Right? And here's the reality situation, talking about being lonely. Here's the issue. You have to compete for high value. You have to compete for men of value. Just like men have to compete for pretty women, attractive women, women have to compete for men of value.
Yep.
That's the reality. So that means you got to get your proverbial weight up, or as Kevin Samuels would say, shout out to the Godfather, get your weight down.
Mm-hmm. Or choose a Pookie and Ray Ray and make the game easy, but you'll suffer from it. That's like what basically wrapping it up on what they're saying. Choosing the Pookie and Ray Ray is like putting the game mode on easy.
Also, too, don't mean to interrupt. Also, I think another problem too with some of these sisters is Black women you need a man with stability. I think some of these sisters are too stuck on you need to be tall, dark, and handsome and make six figures. Okay, first of all, this is the real world. You're not gonna find too many brothers that make six figures, okay? It's not gonna happen. And I think they need to look for men that have stability, good qualities, values. And I think a lot of times, some of these sisters are looking for sugar daddies.
I mean, here's my catch on that. You could be making 6 figures and he's making 5 figures. The question is, what are your standards?
Right.
Do we as Black women have standards anymore? Because if you're saying you want a man, and honestly, personally for me, I don't do dating. I do courtship. And we need to get back to that, because if you're standing as a Black woman saying you need a man, a husband, stop saying this stuff about needing a man and a boyfriend or whatever, situationships and situations. I stand on courtship, because if I stand as a Black woman and I'm saying I need a man in my life to stand there and having children already from a different relationship, and I'm saying that I want a relationship and I want a family, that's a courtship. I'm looking for a man that is willing to get with me, to understand me enough, to have an understanding between the both of us, leading to marriage. So you have to be clear in what you want. You have to be specific in what you want. And I think we lack that as Black women. We are not specifying what we want and we just settle. Stop settling and be clear on what you want and stand firm on it. Because once you stand firm on it and you really follow through it, Ray Ray is not going to be knocking at your door.
Correct. Absolutely. And Sad Cat, shout out to Brother Design for the Cash App. Great point, great point, sis. So listen, we're about to wrap it up. It's almost 11 Eastern here on the East Coast. So final thoughts from everyone. I think this was a great show. As I stated before, I'm going to reach out to Dr. Umar Johnson once again. I'm going to send him text messages. I'm going to really reach out and try to get him back on the show for a part 2, so we can really have a personal conversation with him regarding his soliloquy, his monologue, as I dare say. But final thoughts from, of course, Brother Wisdom Never Sleeps. I always appreciate you tapping in. Brother Javon, father and son, construction. Appreciate you taking time out of your very, very busy day to tap in and be part of the conversation. Then, of course, Sister, the African woman, straight from Tanzania. Are you from Zanzibar or Dar es Salaam?
I'm from Tanzania, but Zanzibar is like a short boat ride to Zanzibar. So yeah.
Okay. Very good. Very good. And then of course we will close out. So Brother Wisdom Never Sleeps. I'm sorry. I give you your final thoughts.
Well, thank you for having the show, having me on. I really appreciate listening, and to everyone that's bringing everything together. I will just simply say this: until we can take the personal accountability, responsibility to make the changes that we need to do, then we can affect the collective body of people in that same way. And so y'all enjoy your evening.
Appreciate you, brother. Brother Javon.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. I appreciate the panel and everybody in the comment section this evening. It was a great conversation. Most importantly, I just want to leave you guys with this. We do have a lot of work to do, but conversations like these are so paramount. It's very important to always have self-recollection. Always make sure that you basically take mental therapy and overall mental wellness into high consideration in finding our way through the forest in these kind of situations. I don't think that everything is going to be doomed. I do have hope. So, with conversations like these and actual tangible tools, we can definitely, see a turnaround. So again, I appreciate everybody on the panel this evening. And thank you, Brother Bakari, for allowing me to be on the panel this evening. I'll try to be in more. And you guys have a good night.
No doubt. Sister African, the African woman, I'm gonna say African queen. You have the final word.
I just want to say thank you so much for all of you. This has been an experience. Thank you for all the men, all your input, whether I was for or against. I learned something. Sometimes it's about being quick to listen and slow to speak. And as women, and as men, we got to do that. So thank you so much. And for the women, the comments and everything, all heard. It's just about understanding. We just got to get in the same page and keep moving.
Absolutely, and I would agree 100%. And I think the consensus that we came to is that those of us in the community who are seeking to be progressive, move forward, and help restore our people to our traditional greatness, those are the individuals we want to associate with. Individuals who are seeking to engage in what I always like to say is what racially disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive behavior. We have to move away from those individuals. And last but not least, there is no panacea in our community. And the goal of the work that we're doing in our community is not to create a utopia. A utopia has never existed, and it never will. As I said before, there will always be nefarious individuals who are in the community. As I stated before at the top of the show and even in the middle of the show, the oldest written criminal justice text that we know of comes from known as the Code of Hammurabi from Mesopotamia. So we're talking about antiquity. There were individuals who were engaging in nefarious activity. And we're not talking about the mythological stories that are in the Bible, right? So we just have to understand that and make sure that we're moving in a direction to where we are ostracizing those type of individuals. Once again, we talk about rooting ourselves in African cultural traditions. I know that was one of the cultural practices that Chinua Achebe highlights in his seminal novel, Things Fall Apart, that if someone engaged in nefarious activity, they were socially ostracized. And Brother Javon knows me personally. We can speak to the fact that there are individuals that we believe are moving in a manner that's not in their own or the community's best interest, and we completely disassociate ourselves with those individuals. Would you agree with that, Brother Javon?
Facts. All day, brother. All day.
Absolutely. So once again, family, appreciate you all for tapping in. Everyone who showed love this evening, greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe and like, hit the notification bell. We're going to make sure that we're doing more videos throughout the week. I'm going to try to do at least 2 or 3 videos throughout the week. But I'm definitely, once again, going to try to get Dr. Umar Johnson back on this live. I'm trying to get him on the live. I'm going to reach out to him first thing tomorrow morning. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Always bet on Black. Peace.